Okay. With that, I will gavel our meeting to order. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees, the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, and the Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners. And Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, could you please recite the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Phyllis, roll call, please.
Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mark Lasis.
Here.
Trustees Ken Lish.
Here.
Kevin Ryan.
Here.
Neil Shaw.
Here.
Laura Skwazinski.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley. I'm sorry, Matt, I didn't hear you.
Looks like he might be frozen on the screen.
Okay, he's here. I see him. Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Phyllis Harden here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items on the agenda board members who would like to pull off the consent agenda or change?
I want to pull 3F.
And I'd like to pull 3E as well.
Okay. Any additional changes to the agenda? All right, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
That was close. Okay, I'll do Trustee Lish and seconded
I'll second
by
it.
Mayor Pro Tem Lasis. And roll call vote, please.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Passes unanimously. We'll go on now to reports, questions, and issues. Who would like to start us off this evening?
I'll go first.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, and we'll follow by Trustee Lish.
Just one thing to report. So I attended a meeting of the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council today. Trustee Lish was there with me. Nothing too momentous to report, but one thing that Broomfield did report about is that tomorrow night at their city council meeting, they're going to be voting on a resolution on a notice of intent to withdraw from the Rocky Mountain Greenway FLAP grant and project at the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. So as everybody may recall, the Rocky Mountain Greenway, subject of litigation currently, but it's a planned bike path that's supposed to connect the Rocky Mountain Arsenal with Rocky Mountain National Park. And it's the projected pathway crosses part of Broomfield and then Rocky Flats as well. So given the turnover on the Broomfield City Council from where Broomfield City Council previously sat, they have had a change of heart in terms of where they stand on the Rocky Mountain Greenway, and they are voting on their actual withdrawal of that project. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the Rocky Mountain Greenway won't happen. There's still a lot of moving pieces in that project. It's a federal program. There's a lot of other governmental entities that are parties to that that plan, but Broomfield looks like they're going to be withdrawing from it. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure there's going to be probably an article or something written in the at least the Broomfield Enterprise, if not the Daily Camera. So stay tuned. And that's it.
Okay, thanks. And we'll go with Ken and then followed by Laura.
Thanks, Clint. Good evening, everybody. This is an update that I think most of the board knows because Matt included it in one of his weekly digests, but for the rest of the public, on October 15th, Trustee Ryan and I attended a Rocky Mountain Fire subgroup meeting. The primary discussion topic was a service agreement and what types of changes would be more palatable to our town. So I think the fire district and our staff are working on that. But of other note, their Chief Tomilato has retired, and in his place, Sterling Folden has been appointed the new interim chief for Rocky Mountain Fire. And then further, the merger is set to take effect and be effective on January 1st of 2021 between Rocky Mountain Fire and Mountain View Fire. However, due to the inclusion and exclusion documents for actually bringing properties into the newly merged district, that is taking effect as of today. So I believe as of today, or maybe it's effective as of midnight tonight, we are part of the Mountain View Fire District, and all of Superior and all the rest of Rocky Mountain Fire is as well. All of it except for 3 properties, which are the properties of the 3 remaining board members of Rocky Mountain Fire, who will stay part of Rocky Mountain Fire for about a year to close the books and finish the transition. Beyond that, I attended with the rest of you a board retreat on October 19th. And then as Mayor Pro Tem Lasis mentioned, I attended the Rocky Flat Stewardship Council with him this morning. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ken. We'll go with Laura, then Kevin and Neil.
Sure. I'll keep my remarks brief. I know I've sent this note to the board, but would like to just note to the listening public as well. We received the Colorado Municipal League's newsletter, and they did an interesting profile on the town of Frisco and their response to COVID, which was essentially that they had town listening sessions where the council and the public could come together and speak openly and brainstorm ideas to keep businesses going and help keep the town safe. This is something that I had mentioned back in March. Again, with the number of cases on the rise, I want to reiterate that I'd like to see us do something creative, not just follow what national guidance or state guidance or even county guidance is, but see what we can do to help the people of Superior. So I know I sent a note to everyone about that, but wanted to make sure I stated it publicly as well. I think this is something that could be incredibly valuable for small businesses in the area, as well as, of course, just individuals who are struggling.
All right, thanks, Laura. Kevin and then Neil.
Sure. Ken, excuse me, did a nice job covering the meeting we had with Rocky Mountain Fire last week, and just want to echo on top of that the gratitude that this board, previous boards, and the entire town Chief Tombo for his fantastic career and his leadership for Rocky Mountain Fire, and wish him well in his retirement. Second, we attended a CAPS meeting last Thursday. My notes have gone away. Those CAPS notes will show up in the next agenda, which I recognize may not be until December. So I'm going to ask Matt to distribute them a little bit early, even if they're in draft format. There will be a couple projects that go to the board for their final approval. There were 2 artists considered, for the Ormond Roche Trailhead. There's one strong recommendation. Both artists were fantastic. The presentations were great, but there's one recommendation that's being made, and would recommend this board and the future board review those applications, and I think they'll be put up for consideration on, Matt, I think that tentative meeting is scheduled for December 14th. Do I have that right? No, December. Yeah. December 14th, which seems hard to believe. That's the next meeting I will have. And finally, there is a chance that I will not be on the board. I am, of course, running for re-election. And in the event I am not reelected, I just want to thank all of you and the staff and the community for the privilege of being permitted to serve over the last 4 years.
Right. Thanks, Kevin.
Ditto.
And Neil.
Yeah, thanks. On October 20th, I actually had the opportunity to take a tour of the 2 Superior schools by Area Superintendent Margaret Crespo, and the principal of the 2 schools, Kent Kruger and Barb Aswije. During the meeting, that this town board had with the BVSD board, Superintendent Anderson offered us an opportunity to tour the schools, and I took him up on that. And I have to say that I was duly impressed by what I saw. It was the first day of learning of having all K through 5 back in the buildings, and the tech upgrades that they've gone through I thought it worked extremely well. As a parent in the community, I know we love our schools, and I know how important a quality education is. I think we all place tremendous faith on our teachers and the administration, not only to educate our children and mold them, but to keep them safe. This parent was well impressed by the level of thoughtfulness that has accompanied the reopening of their schools, and I am fully committed to helping them succeed. On October 21st, I attended the monthly ProStack meeting. It was the first meeting with our 4 new members. It was great to see so many new faces. A number of the ProStack committee members were able to tour 1500 Colton prior to the meeting, and everybody came back really excited. And I think getting inside the building for a number of folks crystallized a lot of the conceptual drawings that they've been seeing up until then. Mike Svetz from Pros Consulting gave ProStack a deep dive on all the data that's been collected as part of the master plan process. It's a bit of a data dump. I think I forwarded you the deck this morning. He spent about an hour and a half to go through it, and I think consumed a large part of the agenda for ProStack. But there's still a long ways to go. It's a tremendous amount of data, and it's actually really enlightening so far. For everybody else who's listening, the deck is now posted on Shape Superior. And finally, ProStack was directionally in support of the realignment as we discussed at our retreat last week. From them, the next steps are to revise a charter to reflect the realignment and I guess go to ratification in December. I think that's everything I have.
Okay, thanks, Neil. And my only announcement is to everyone to make sure that you vote. This was our last meeting before the election, and just make sure to complete those ballots. Vote the whole ballot if you can. And thanks as we kind of close out this term on the board. Thanks for all those to all those board members serving, and we will look forward to the election and seeing the results of those. So, thanks, everyone. And turn it now to Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report, but I did ask Sergeant Troy Wolf with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office to attend the meeting tonight, just to give us an update on some of the concerns that board members have heard with regard to street racing. I appreciate Sergeant Wolf being here tonight. I know him and a lot of the employees with the Boulder County Sheriff's Office have been busy with managing the fires that we've had in the county. So I appreciate his time, and just turn it over to you, Sergeant Wolf.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate that, everybody. And yes, I'm appreciative of the snowfall. That was a great relief. Hopefully these fires will be well underway to be extinguished here soon. But anyway, the street racing thing, it did come to light sometime back in the early fall, late summer. The sheriff attended one of your board meetings, talked about State Patrol being involved. We have since reached out to them, made an official request for them to have a presence on Highway 36. And the member of the State Patrol did respond to me and said that they do have a task force that's in place, and they're dealing with not only Highway 36, but several of the other major corridors throughout the metro area. But they've had about 7 operations that they've conducted, including US 36. They've run across a large group of those motorists somewhere in Boulder at the Safeway at Foothills and Baseline. Did a lot of education of them and enforcement that they could at the time. I know they've kind of spilled into Superior. They used to gather at the Best Buy over in Broomfield, and that's since become a new construction zone. So they kind of got pushed out. And we've had contact with them and had some conversations with them and tried to move them away from that area, park in front of Whole Foods. I had a conversation with Assistant Manager Martin Toth, and we're going to speak further with Brixmore, who has the private property there in Whole Foods. See if we can't come with some sort of a plan to maybe use the trespass angle to move these guys along. But everybody's fully aware of the problem. We're trying to put some resources together. That I talked with our Division Chief Sullenberger about the participation in that task force. And at this point, we are in critical staffing mode as far as early retirements and people leaving for various personal reasons, but he was not willing to commit resources to that at this point. So there are a number of directives have been put out both by myself and the traffic unit about conducting some enforcement here in Superior as appropriate, as well as when they have availability on Highway 36. So it's not going unnoticed, and it's a work in progress. So we are fully aware. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sergeant Wolf. Appreciate that update. Anyone have any questions?
I do have one quick question. Sergeant Wolf, thank you very much for the update. Not specific to the street racing, but I've just anecdotally, I'm still seeing posts on social media and whatnot of some of the small scale theft and crimes of opportunity around town. Can you speak to anything as far as if there's any, I guess, county-wide effort on that part? I think Sheriff Pelley had noted that we've seen a 30% uptick over the past year in crimes of opportunity, but whether you have any updates for our community on that front.
Unfortunately, it's not just a Superior issue. It's a metro-wide process, but really put a number of informational requests. It's usually a crime of opportunity. People not securing their garage doors, leaving their vehicles unlocked. Generally speaking, if we could combat that with some helpful tips to continue to lock their doors, we would make some progress there. We have, in addition to asking for extra patrols for the street race, the night shift has dumped a ton of resources down here that the districts that don't normally work down here, they are combing these streets looking for suspicious activities. So don't wait to call till the next morning. Call immediately if you're witnessing anything like that, please.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I have a question, Sergeant Wolf, about the street racing. So, I've been reading up on it and, watching various news clips that I've found. This is a metro-wide problem. There's racing going on I-25, on 225, on 470, on a number of different streets, not just US 36. And it seemed like the response from the state patrol was that they're not actually trying to go after these cars because they can't actually catch them. They're going too fast for the actual police interceptors. And it seemed to me like the response from the state patrol was kind of, they're shrugging their shoulders saying, there's not much that we can do about it. And, maybe they're, keeping it close to the vest in terms of what their actual strategy is. But have you heard anything similar? Because that to me just seems like not an acceptable answer to get from the state patrol.
Yeah, I really can't speak to that because I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can come back and keep us informed in terms of what the sheriff's office is doing and hearing from the state patrol, state troopers in terms of what efforts they're actually going to do to address this, because it seems like it's probably a seasonal thing. I don't think that the racing is as prominent in the winter months as it is in the summer months, but I don't think that this is going to be going away. And I think it's going to continue to be a problem for our residents.
Will do.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks again for coming in. All right. And Kendra, any announcements?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Thanks. And Phyllis?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right. Very good. We are on now to public comment. And this is public comment for consent agenda presentations. We've got 2 presentations tonight, or non-agenda items. So if anyone would like to comment on consent agenda presentations or non-agenda items, now is the time. Looks like we've got one hand raised. It's a phone number last of 6034. Go ahead and identify yourself, please. Looks like you need to unmute. I think it's *9 to talk. Is that correct?
Should be *6.
*6. There we go.
Good evening, board. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you guys. I really don't like doing this over the phone. I wish we were back in person. Anyways, My name is Brad Walker, and I live in the town of Superior. I'm a certificated pilot, an active member of AOPA. At the recent board work session, the topic of landing fees was raised by Mark Lasis. I would like to respond to his comments and other comments made by the board members. I think the town attorney will want to pay close attention to my comments at the end. Rocky Mountain Metro has a $750 million economic impact on the economy, as reported by the Colorado Department of Transportation. In addition, numerous businesses like Pilatus and Ball Aerospace support a lot of high-paying jobs that are held by your voting constituents. I'd also like to point out that, according to the FAA, 47 pilots live in Superior, Colorado. So when Mark Lasis says he wants to advocate for an economic disincentive, he's advocating for creating financial harm to the citizens he represents. Given the dire condition of the economy, advocating for financial pain via landing fees is extremely counterproductive. RMNA is not an outlier, as Mr. Lasis has mentioned. On the contrary, RMNA follows the behavior of most airports in the United States, whereby landing fees are not imposed. In regards to airports that do implement landing fees, these fees are mostly driven by the operator having a business reason, such as at airports with scheduled passenger service. In addition, landing fees are usually not paid by operators based at the airport because often these operators already pay a possessory interest tax as a result of their business operations. Lastly, I'd like to remind the board that relying on anecdotal information from an uninformed acquaintance does not make good policy and shows a lack of leadership on this matter. I noticed that tomorrow the Jefferson County Commissioners have an agenda item on their schedule to approve an expense of $1.5 million for the acquisition of the CenturyLink property for open space. I would be strongly advocating this expense be postponed until after the newly elected board members have been seated for Jefferson County. This is exactly what Mr. Lasis advocated with his request for a letter to be sent after the new town of Superior board members have been seated. Lastly, I would say, why would Jefferson County spend their tax dollars when Mark Lasis advocates for an economic disincentive to be imposed on RMNA? I'd also like to point out, as you are aware, the Rock Creek HOA has decided to initiate a lawsuit against RMNA. It would not surprise me to discover this lawsuit has entangled the members of the Board of Trustees. As a result of this entanglement, your ability to govern in relation to the airport matter could be severely curtailed. Thank you for your time. Respectfully, Brad Walker.
Thanks for your comments, Mr. Walker. Any additional public comment at this time? Any additional public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to our presentations this evening. We've got first up is our Boulder County Health Director, Jeff Zayich, the Executive Director. Welcome, Jeff Zayich.
Thank you, Mayor and Town Manager and council members. I appreciate the invite. I think somebody's going to run the slides for me, and if not, I can.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
There you go, Joe.
What I'm going to do today is just walk us through where we're at in Boulder County in terms of our current data, and then talk at the end about some of the challenges that we're having ahead of us as we move into the fall and winter months here. So the first slide here is the state currently tracks 3 indicators for each county across the state. One of those is incidence rate by county, and all these are 2-week cumulative measures. The second is positivity rate, and the third is hospitalizations. And each of these are color coded, as you can see on this graph. The green represents protect our neighbor levels. The blue represents safer at home level 1. The yellow there represents safer at home level 2, safer at home level 3 is the next, and then finally stay at home. And the state categorizes each local public health agency based on where they fall in this dial. You can look this up just by searching COVID-19 dial, and it will automatically come up at the state. Any person can track this on their own as well. Currently, Boulder County Public Health and Boulder County are in Safer at Level Home 2, which is that middle level. With each of the levels that you see color coded here, there is a subsequent list of restrictions that go with each category. So for instance, if we moved from Safer at Level Home 2, where we are now, our businesses are at 50% capacity under Safer at Home Level 2 to a Safer at Home Level 3, that restricts business capacity more. Just as one example, there is a whole list of restrictions in each of the categories, more restrictive moving to the right, less restrictive moving to the left. We just went through, I think everybody's aware, a pretty big surge with the University of Colorado, where we went from where we started, which was Safer at Home Level 2, all the way over to stay at home. And with some approaches and orders that we put in place, we've brought that back to Safer at Home Level 2. So we remained in the same category that we started in. What you can see here is our incidence rate as of this morning in Boulder County. And this is updated at 4 p.m. every day. I didn't have a chance to pull data from this afternoon, but again, people could check that on their own. We are at 174.5. If we trigger over the top of that and go to 175 or above, then we would technically need to be evaluated if we cannot reduce those levels within a 2-week period to move to that next level on the dial, which means that it would come with additional restrictions. And I wanted to take a little more time up front here to describe the context of that, because these 3 measures are really what categorize each county across the state in the restrictions that they will have to apply. And it's pretty important as we go through our data and move forward. So you can see we're very close to that. I do anticipate, because we are seeing increases, generalized increases, that we are going to move into that orange level, and that we will have to consider additional approaches and restrictions in the weeks ahead of us. So that's just an FYI. Go to the next slide, please. This is the second measure. It's the 2-week testing positivity rate. You can see that we're at 4%. A week ago or so, we were at just a little above 3%. So our positivity rate is increasing slowly, but we're still in the green. So we are at this point, we would have to be above 10% to move out of the safer, that category for Safer at Level Home 2. The next slide, please. This is our number of days of declining or stable hospitalizations. And the reason this is important is because if our hospitalizations increase and we stress our hospital system, then it can have serious impacts for people who need ICU care, who need other emergency care in the hospital, and we don't want to stress our system. You heard a lot about this early on in the disease progression. Right now, Boulder County is at 11 days of declining or stable new hospitalizations. And there's a measure in here that the state is using that is a little bit different than our individual measures, which I'm going to cover in a slide moving forward, but we are currently green on this. Once you get to 0 to 7 days, then you move into the red. So this is either a green or red measure. We've only got 2 counties right now in the state that are actually in red, but we are seeing generalized increases in hospitalizations across the state at this point. Next slide. This is a busy graph, but the thing I wanted to illustrate here, the red line is Boulder County. The other counties that are listed here are metro counties in the Denver metro region. And you can see that before the rest of the counties outside of Denver had an increase, you could see Boulder's increase. Boulder's was driven by the University of Colorado surge. So the majority, as I'll show you in a graph in just a second, majority of the students that came back were the reason that we had the surge that you see there. At that time, we were the highest and largest surge in the entire state of Colorado. And as I mentioned, what we're seeing now is surges across the metro region and across the state that are concerning, and it's happening in most all age categories across the state. The green line and the blue line are Adams County and Denver County, and you can see that their numbers of new cases on a 7-day average are significantly higher than the highest surge that we had in the CU response. So that is tasking our entire system. It's tasking the state system, and is the challenge that we have in front of us. Next slide, please. This is a graph that shows in the dark blue the number of cases in Boulder County and our case trends since late August. And what I wanted to illustrate here is the light blue cases. So again, that surge that you saw on that last line was primarily associated with Boulder County residents who are CU affiliated, whether they're staff or students. And you can see that we had a significant increase when students came back. We partnered really closely with the university, with the city of Boulder and Boulder County to really get a mitigation plan in place that we're currently using now. And that mitigation plan, as you can see, has been pretty effective. That includes a whole host of strategies, some of which include both City of Boulder enforcement that's occurring, as well as disciplinary actions that have been beefed up at the University of Colorado, as well as a whole host of direct outreach strategies and some online town halls that are being held both with parents, students, and staff on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. This just demonstrates our 5-day average from the very beginning of the disease incidents in Boulder County as it started. And you can see that the peak that we had here, which again resulted in by far the highest number of cases across our entire disease transmission time here, was a pretty significant challenge for us. And again, this is a 5-day rolling average. When the number of cases was at its highest, it was above 180. And just to give folks that are listening in tonight the context of why that's important, for every single person who's positive, investigations take between 2 and 3 hours for each of those people that are positive. Each of those people that are positive generates a average number of contacts for somebody who's then probable of 4 to 5 people per positive person. So when you look at numbers like 180 cases, and you think about the amount of time it takes just for the investigation of the positive case, and then you look at 4 probable cases that came into close contact with that person on average for each case, it adds up significantly in terms of resources and time. And those contact cases, and that's where you hear the term contact tracing, it's tracing the cases that were associated with that positive case, which again is on average of 4 per every positive. Those investigations take between 30 minutes and an hour, depending on the complexity of them. So that's a lot of resources and a lot of time, and it's very easy to lose control of an outbreak like this when you have that much resource that has to go into controlling the case. Contact tracing and case investigations, and then the associated isolation and quarantine are one of the best controls we have for controlling the spread of this disease, and that's why that number is so important. Next slide, please. This just shows the total residents who've tested positive or probable across each of our municipalities. You can see Superior there with 87, very low numbers comparative to most of our other municipalities. Next slide, please. This is what you probably heard us talking about in the press for the last few weeks, and what resulted in orders for 18 to 22-year-olds. This graph shows in that dark line that goes up to that case rate of 3,780.6 per 100,000 residents over a 2-week period. That shows the large spike in cases, and that was directly associated again with the 18 to 22-year-olds and primarily in our CU population. So if you look at all of those other age groups on the bottom of that graph, there has been and was very little comparatively increase in those age groups, and it clearly shows that that age group was the challenge. We've worked together with students in this process. So students came through because ultimately, unless you have behavior change, it's hard to control this, and that comes down to individual responsibility. And it was through the partnership with the university, with the City of Boulder, and with the behavior change in students that we were able to accomplish this and get it back down to a baseline. We also have a mitigation plan in place now that's helping us assure that this number stays low as we move forward. Next slide. This is busy graph, but what I really just wanted to illustrate here is, again, this is all of our age groups across the county, excluding the 18 to 22-year-olds, who we can probably now add back into this because they're no longer a giant line that would be well off this graph. But we are seeing generalized increases in all age categories. And again, this is the challenge that I'm going to highlight at the end of the presentation, and the challenge that's in front of all of us, both those of you who are on council, but individually for everybody that's calling in as well, or that's listening in as well. Next slide. This is our total hospitalizations in Boulder County. You can see that after the end of May, we were down at a small baseline of single-digit numbers for most of the summer. We did see a spike around July 4th, and then we saw a subsequent spike since after Labor Day that has continued to increase across the state. Next slide. I do want to talk about, I get a lot of questions, and I thought it would be important to talk about schools here because we do get a lot of questions as to why we're supporting schools being back in session. And what we know about schools is that there's very little transmission that's happening from school to school, and schools are not super spreader events. So for instance, when we look back at the schools that opened before Boulder Valley School District and before St. Vrain Valley School District as an example across the state, we see that the folks who have been quarantined in schools associated with positive cases, we're not seeing any secondary spread that's occurring. The cases that are being brought into the schools are primarily being brought in from outside the schools. So we're seeing that consistent in Boulder Valley and St. Vrain Valley School Districts as well as other schools across the state. And this Brown University study that's being referenced here, that's looked at, it's now more than 200,000 students. I haven't updated this, but we'll do so. And in 47 states, has also been finding the same things. This virus is obviously new, and we learn a lot about this virus as each week and month passes. So we're keeping a close eye on what does this mean for our kids? What does this mean for different age groups of kids? We know that across K through 12 schools, that especially in the K through 5 age group, that there's definitely less spread and less concern. Not that kids can't have the virus, but they just don't act as spreaders of the virus to adults. They're very low risk in terms of their ability to spread or to be super spreaders, like we saw at CU as an example. So I wanted to address that because we know that we have significant issues when we have kids out of school. We know that kids have significant learning deficits now, even with the limited amount of time that they haven't been able to be in person. And that's especially true in our youngest students and our most vulnerable students. So having kids back to school while reducing the risk of the virus is really important as we move forward. And we've been working really closely with both our school districts to do that to the maximum extent possible. We are seeing some transmission from our early childhood education centers where we do have some demonstrated spread from children to adults, but again, it is it's a very low level risk, does not happen very frequently, and is not a significant risk like it is for adult to adult spread. Next slide, please. This just shows the challenge at the statewide level. These are statewide number of cases. Again, illustrates the same kind of graph that you saw in the metro level slide that I showed you. High number of cases at the state level, much higher than our previous two peaks in this disease incidence. Next slide. We're also seeing similar trends across the United States. On October 24th, we were at a high of almost 80,000 cases in the United States, and we're on an upward trend. Next slide, please. This just demonstrates some of the states where we have the high cases are staying high, or we are seeing significant increases. So if you look at the extremes on the far left upper side of that graph, North Dakota, South Dakota, really significant. That's over the entire, again, disease period from March until now. And if you look at those graphs and see the significant increase comparative to the early time of that outbreak. You can see some of the challenges that these current states are facing. Next slide. This is where I wanted to talk about the challenge that's in front of us, because essentially what this shows is it's transmission control. And this is a new term that the state is now using. This used to be called social distancing effectiveness. So just as an example, when we were in our stay at home time in the March and April timeframes, so this is when people were told they need to stay at home, only essential services and critical services were available. People who were providing those services are available to go to work. This is when we were in our most restrictive times of restrictions in the state. We were at between 75 and 80% social distancing or transmission control. And what we're seeing right here in this graph, if you look at the blue graph, this is our current transmission control level. So the bottom dotted line was the highest level that we saw early in the disease transmission. So you can see it was up to 400 in projected ICU need. And at that point, we were stressing our systems where we set up additional capacity locations like the events center. We had St. Mary's Hospital and other places where we had surge capacity set up, but we didn't really have to use it that much. We were close to it, but we didn't have to use it. Right now, our current level of estimated transmission control is about 67%. You can see that by November 20th, if we don't change anything, we're going to start to climb towards exceeding where we were before. And by January, we would exceed by far our ICU capacity. So we have to change this trajectory. And the reason this is occurring is because people have COVID fatigue. We all do. I have it. I know we all have it that are listening to this. And our challenge is that this disease transmission and what happens with this disease is absolutely driven by individual behavior. We know that we're seeing more spread because we have more social gatherings, just like I showed you in the previous graph, when July 4th was there and we had more people getting together, not social distancing, not wearing masks, which definitely make a difference, maybe not paying as much attention to hygiene, then we see increases in cases. And the same thing is happening now. We're seeing more social distancing get relaxed. And as a result, we're starting to see more increases in cases, and we're threatening this graph more and more. What the graph demonstrates is that we really need to, in order to keep this line below the 1,800 count at the state level, we really need to keep this at least 70% transmission control, which means we have to increase our social distancing more than we're at now. And ideally, we would be down more around 75% social distancing or transmission control. What those dotted lines demonstrate is that if you wait just 1 week or 2 weeks past it's 11/6, even though that line's slightly over. If we wait beyond November 6th, even a week or two, you can see how the trajectory of that line goes up, and we put ourselves more at risk. So timing is critical, and we really need to be thinking about this, especially as we go into the holidays. Next slide. I'm almost there. These are our key takeaways, and it's just emphasizing some of the things you just saw me present. We're increasing cases statewide in most all age groups. We know that the only way to really control that, or one of the most effective ways to really control that, is to make sure that people follow the social distancing requirements, really adhere to the small gatherings, make sure we're wearing masks. We are also seeing increases in all Boulder County age groups, as I showed you. We know our hospitalizations are increasing statewide and locally. And unfortunately, in the population that's 55 and over, we see more both acute impacts associated with that, as well as increasing deaths as we get up in the age category to above 65. So we're trying to prevent that as much as we possibly can. Like I said, the city of Boulder, Boulder County, and the university implemented a mitigation plan for the University of Colorado. So far, that plan is working. We will keep that in place as long as we have students continuing at the University of Colorado. Fall and winter are going to be a challenge because we are moving people indoors as the weather gets colder. We are going into a period where we have holidays, and typically holidays come with gatherings, and family wants to get together, and we're mixing flu in with COVID at that same time of the year. When people have COVID fatigue, and we know that that is going to be a challenge for us as we move into these next months ahead of us. So my main message is please stay diligent. Really focus on really maintaining the social distancing, at least 6 feet distance when you're indoors. It's good to increase ventilation as much as possible. Make sure you're wearing masks. Make sure you're following the public health orders. There's links to all of those on the state websites as well as our website. You can get to all of that. And again, that message of individual behaviors is what really drive the outcomes, because we certainly, even when we put orders in place, we can't be everywhere all the time. And it really does come down to people taking responsibility to control the spread of this disease. And I think that's my last slide. I'll stop there.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. We'll take questions from the board.
Jeff, thank you for taking the time to present to us. It's pretty scary looking at some of those graphs. And I'm assuming that that graph that we were looking at with the November 6th projection, that was a statewide graph, right? That wasn't just Boulder County.
That's correct, yes.
So in light of that, I mean, how close are we to, increased, orders from either, Boulder County Public Health or from the state, whether it's a ratcheting up of the safer at home or, actually going back to a stay at home type arrangement, because, obviously we've got people indoors now, the weather's turning, we've got less opportunity for people to be outside. Kids are going back to school. Adams County, Denver public schools, they're all delaying in-person learning. So, what's your crystal ball here? Are we going back to March, April pretty soon?
I certainly hope that we're not. So what will happen, I'll give you an example of what we did with the University of Colorado when we had the surge. So as soon as we started to see our numbers creep above that safer at level 2 home, we had a meeting with the state, and we met with the state and said, here's our plans for how we're going to control this disease spread. We put a mitigation plan in place. We worked with the city of Boulder and CU. We put 2 orders in place. One was a restriction on properties that were major challenges for us, sororities, fraternities, some of the collegiate living homes that had just not been following the orders and were pretty difficult to really control behaviors associated with. And the second was on the 18 to 22-year-olds. And then we worked together with students with a lot of marketing and messaging and those orders to approach that. If we go into safer at home level 3, which I do think we will move into in the next few days based on the case rates that I'm seeing, we will meet with the state again. We'll be required to sit down with them and say, okay, what is the plan for how we're going to control or attempt to control and get this number back down in the next 2 weeks. So we'll have a 2-week period of time to do that. We know the places where some of the spread's occurring. We know that in our Latinx population, we're seeing spread. And a lot of that spread is because these are the folks that are providing our critical services in our community. And it's really difficult and hard for them to be able to take time off when they're quarantined and stay at home and not receive a paycheck or not get support for their family. So we're doing some work directly with our populations across the county in those areas. We also know that we're seeing a lot of house-to-house spread. We're seeing a lot of social gathering spread. There's already been a change from the state on the public health order. So now, no matter what of those levels you're in, between safer at home level 1 and safer at home level 3, that you cannot have more than a gathering of 10 people and no more than two households can be in that gathering. Because if you have, the more households you have in a gathering, even if it's a small number, less than 10, we know that it spreads once it goes back to that household. It's very hard to control the spread within the household. So the more numbers of households you have together, the larger the effect of that spread that can occur. So there's been some changes already. In a worst case scenario, if we could not control or bring those case numbers back down in the 2 weeks, then what the state would do is they would move us to safer at home level 3, which is a host of restrictions that would have to go into effect that we don't want to have happen and go into effect, because it's going to have an impact on our businesses. It's going to have an impact on our economy. It's going to have an impact on our behavioral health, our social and economic health. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We'd rather be moving left on the dial than right on the dial. And that's why I'm imploring everybody I can to please follow these guidelines, because the implications have impacts on our entire economy and on our social and physical well-being.
So thank you for that. And I did see the order that came out from CDPHE this past Friday, and Denver's got an even tighter restriction where they're limiting gatherings to 5 people now. So if you have office settings, you have a meeting in an office, you're limited to 5 people. One additional question. So, I heard what you were saying about schools, and a lot of parents are nervous about sending their kids to schools. Right now, a lot of parents are excited about sending their kids back to school too at the same time. It seems to me that there is, at some point there's a line, right, where, if we're trending in one direction and that is going to, force us into level 3 safer at home, that should probably have some sort of impact on, whether it's safe to be sending our kids and teachers and workers to schools. So can you give any insight as to, what we can reasonably anticipate and what we should be expecting in terms of, how long our kids are actually going to be staying in an in-person learning environment if we are moving along the trajectory of safer at home level 3?
Yeah, safer at home level 3 includes hybrid and remote for schools, but it doesn't include, so they don't want full in-person school at that level. Right now we're in-person or hybrid or remote. So any of those 3 is where we're actually at right now on the dial. But if it moves to safer at home level 3, then it's hybrid or remote. So that's an example of a change. At stay at home, you're in full remote schooling at that point. So if you look, and I'm happy to send a link out to you all so you can see the documents and the associated categories of restrictions that go along with it, and you could share it on your website if you wanted for the public that's listening into this. But that website is a good website to look at what associated restrictions come with each of those levels.
Yeah, that would be great if you could share that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
Jeff, thank you. Handful of questions. You talked about contact tracing. There was a great report out last week on NPR, who's been doing some great reporting on this weekly, around how states are just unprepared around contact tracing. Our state was reported to have about 800 across the state and about 2,500 required. So less than a third of total contact tracers. I want to use this, my opportunity, to put a little commercial out there. CDPHP finally did what I think they should have done a few months ago, which is push out the technology contact tracing through an app. So this is all completely de-identified data. However, if you have, right now it's an opt-in solution. If you have 40% of the population, which is sort of a best guess, that are both opting in, and you have an interaction using Bluetooth technology, best case scenario, we're going to be able to track 16% of those cases, 40% or 40%. So what I'd like to do is use my time today with a literal tutorial. So I'm going to ask everybody to take out their phones, and we're all going to opt in right now. So assuming everybody has an iPhone, scroll down through your iPhone in settings. Those at home hopefully are doing this as well. From settings, scroll down to exposure notifications. Click on exposure notifications. Now mine has already been activated, so I'm not going to be able to see this, but first thing you need to do is turn on your exposure notifications. And then you'll be able to select your region, Colorado Department of Public Health. After, I think first you need to select the United States. What I'd like to ask everybody to do is make sure you do this. You are not giving up your own privacy. All this information will be de-identified. Tell everybody you know to do the exact same thing. Jeff, thank you for the good work that you and your colleagues in Boulder County are doing.
Thank you.
Jeff, just one question. You know, as you think about the town of Superior, we share a very long border with Broomfield. And the real question is, you know, what level of collaboration do you have with the Broomfield County of Health? And the reason I ask that is that one of those charts you showed, Broomfield's at the bottom of the entire state for all counties. What are they doing differently? Because, you know, obviously, as you look at the outbreak list on the state website, you know, the Freddy's, which is like, you know, a quarter mile away from us, just had an outbreak. It's listed on there. But that's about the only outbreak within a 10-mile radius of the town of Superior. You know, I think all the outbreaks that we're seeing in Boulder County are scattered throughout Boulder. So what is it that Broomfield is doing differently? Is it demographics? Is it outreach? You know, what is it that we can learn from them about, you know, what we should be, you know, sort of advocating for here?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. We are in extremely close collaboration with Broomfield. So two things, and then I'll answer your question. The first one is we have what's called the Metro Denver Partnership for Health, which is all of those counties that were listed on that graph that I first showed you. We meet twice a week. We have an administrative services organization. So we plan our strategies together across that region. We share data together. We look at trends together. So we're meeting very, very frequently. Broomfield has been involved in all of the meetings with Boulder Valley School District as an example for the decision-making that we're doing. So we're very closely collaborating. The graph that I showed you was the 7-day average of new cases. So that's a bit misleading because it's not a rate that would take into account population. So their number was lower because their total population is lower. If you look at rates, Broomfield and Boulder have consistently, along with Douglas County, have been consistently low in the lowest in the state. So we're all about the same in terms of some of those rates that are occurring. Broomfield is taking the same approaches on strategies that we are. We have very similar approaches. Sometimes Boulder's a little more restrictive than Broomfield. Sometimes Broomfield's a little bit more restrictive than Boulder, but we always plan those things together. So we do work very, very closely together. And there is, I don't know that there is an example across the entire state that we could point to at this point and say, here's what we could do differently. We have been doing great up to this point. We need to figure out, and we know what's some of driving this is just the COVID fatigue and the lack of social distancing. It absolutely does come down to really having people take personal responsibility. And I know how awful that feels right now. And I don't want people to lose hope because we don't need to lose hope. We're going to get through this. But in order to have the minimal amount of impacts on our businesses and on our society, we've got to take personal responsibility to make sure we're social distancing and wearing masks. That's key. It's absolutely key to how we move forward.
No, I appreciate that. I think the point you made, you know, sort of the per capita rate number is instructive because what is it, slide 10, where you've broken it down for Boulder County by age, you know, on that per capita basis. I guess I've struggled to find a similar slide like that, you know, sort of properly weights each of the counties, because obviously Denver's, you know, substantially larger than Broomfield, substantially larger than Boulder. So their spike on a per capita basis may not look as bad, but I do appreciate the fact that there's a lot of collaboration happening. And, you know, I think we as this board are going to do everything we can to continue to get the message out.
Yeah, and there is a public website for that. You can look at those rates yourself. I'll make sure I include that with the email on the state website as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jeff, thanks for joining us tonight, and I appreciate you when you joined us at the Boulder County Consortium of Cities meeting a couple months back. Talking about contact tracers again, how are we doing here in Boulder County? Do we have an ample amount? Are you hiring? What can you say about our level of people who are actually doing the tracing right now?
So we are still hiring, and we don't have enough contact tracers to deal with the surge like we just saw at CEU as an example. So when we went into that surge, we had to rely heavily on the state. The state has a total of, I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere around 600 contact tracers at a statewide level. And when we went into that surge, we had to rely on the state to help us out and support those. In addition, we set up a memorandum of agreement with the University of Colorado, who also has 70 contact tracers. And I don't remember the total number of case investigators, but it's in the teens, between 10 and 20. So we set up a MOU with them so that they could actually handle their surge, but even with their contact tracers, with their case investigators, with ours, we still needed to rely on CDPHE. And the challenge that we're in right now is that we are in a statewide outbreak situation where you saw those explosive cases in those few counties. All of them are now going up. That tasks our entire state system. So I would say our state system at this point is in a task scenario. That's why we really do need to get control of what we're seeing in terms of those case increases in all those age groups.
Okay, thanks. And then also, you mentioned people staying indoors more, but also having the fatigue. As we roll into the winter months and people are trying to get out and still enjoy themselves and go to restaurants, I've had residents ask me about what they're starting to see on restaurant websites and advertisements about people installing, or restaurants installing purifiers, iWave air purifiers and that sort of thing. Can you speak to the efficacy of those at all? And does that help, or is that outside your realm of expertise?
It's a little outside of my realm of expertise, but I know where to get the information, and I can include that as well when I send the email.
That would be great. And then one final question. You've given us some great information tonight. If you could ask us, the Town Board of Superior, to do anything to make your job easier or better, is there anything else that you would ask of us that you haven't already touched on?
The thing that I would ask is, number one, you're doing one of them. Continue to do not have in-person meetings. What we're seeing and there is a outbreak website on the state's website, so you can go to it and look at where are the outbreaks coming from across the state. Workplaces are one of those. Restaurants are another one of those. So we do need to be really thoughtful when we're in restaurants, again, about maintaining that 6 foot of social distance. There's a number of other categories. And again, those social distancing are a major driver. When we're not social distancing because we're having gatherings, that is another major driver. The thing that you can do is continue to meet like this, unless you absolutely have to be in person. This is one of the steps you can take to reduce the risk, because if you're not sitting in the same room, you're reducing the risk of spreading this disease among other people. The second thing I would say is, please, for every single one of you that's talking with your neighbors, anything you can do, and our PIOs are already linked, so I think they're completely synced in terms of the messaging that's going out. But we want to continue to get this message out about taking personal responsibility. It's critical. And I don't know that everybody understands what it means when we have to move a level on the dial and how that has impacts on our businesses and on our economy and just on our personal, social, emotional, and physical health. So keep continuing to get that message out and modify it is really helpful, especially as we go into these fall months.
Excellent. Jeff, thank you so much for the work of you and your team. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all of you.
All right. Thank you very much. Anything else from our board? All right. We appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Our next presentation this evening is from Verizon. We've got an update on the Verizon macro site at Community Park.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we asked a rep from Verizon. I see Deborah there. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for attending tonight to speak to the board. Just to give the board and the public an update on the macro facility that is planned for Community Park, and then the micro facilities that we have in the community. And so the delays that Verizon's had due to the pandemic, but I think it's still a priority for Verizon. And so we asked for Debbie to attend and just give an update for the board. Thanks.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. So nice to see all of you again. It's been a while since I was in front of you. Obviously the pandemic this year has changed our business plans a little bit, definitely changed the opportunities that we've had this year. Probably much like any business that's working, we've had to reevaluate what we've been able to do this year, because we definitely had some setbacks due to the pandemic, but definitely want to make sure that you all have the confidence that Verizon is still committed to improving the services in the town. We also, as part of the issue with the pandemic, we're still awaiting regulatory approval on our macro facility. So we have to file regulatory paperwork that goes through the FCC and through some of the tribal offices that have jurisdiction here in the state of Colorado. And so most of those tribal offices closed down for some time during the pandemic. So we're starting to see some of those tribal offices open back up again, but we won't be able to move forward until we also receive that regulatory clearance. So that's one of the hurdles that is in front of us right now in order to be able to move that project forward. So we still are finalizing our build plan for next year, reevaluating some of the numbers, some of the business decisions that we had to make, but we still see this site as one of the projects we intend to push forward for next year. And I'll pause there and take questions.
Thanks.
Just a quick one, Debbie. I appreciate it, you coming in. I think when we started talking a year and a half ago, I think the original plan had been micro towers, and then it moved to macro cell. Is a regulatory approval different for the mini towers versus the macro?
It depends on the site and the location, to be completely honest with you. Every location is evaluated, and based on the specific location will determine the specific requirements of that location. So it's not always uniform across the board for sites. I will tell you that we've put a lot of effort into the macro site. So the site, we call it Den Colton, going at the ball field. And I think we've taken a little bit step back in terms of the small cell facilities that we talked to you all about, simply because, one, I think we're going to see greater impact from the macro facility. So we wanted to make sure that we get that particular project moved forward, and then continue to evaluate where the small cells are. As you know, there's also some technology changes going. So we want to make sure that we're evaluating and putting our best foot forward and having the most positive impact that we can. And so we feel like right now, moving the macro facility forward makes the most sense. So I won't say that we're not doing the small cells right now, but the focus right now is on the macro facility.
All right, thanks.
So Debbie, thanks for coming back and speaking with us. Nice to see you again. I certainly appreciate that Verizon has committed to improving cell service here in Superior, and appreciate everything that you guys have done so far in terms of the work that you've done to identify the dead zones in town and planning to install the macro tower at Community Park. I think our residents have been, more than patient in terms of dealing with Verizon. Obviously, we understand that there's been a pandemic and that can slow things down. Some of us have gone so far as to actually install boosters within our own homes to deal with the service. So it's still a problem. And, I'm just going to plead with you guys to get this thing done as soon as possible. What can we tell the public in terms of a reasonable timeline for when construction is going to start and when this thing will actually be installed?
I appreciate all your support. I mean, I think you were instrumental in helping us work with your citizens and identifying some areas. So I definitely appreciate all the effort you put into it. I wish I had a definitive time frame. I don't. The town has been fantastic to work with. I certainly hope all of your citizens realize all the great teamwork and effort that you all have put forth to be great partners for Verizon. But at this point, I don't have an exact start time frame. Again, regulatory is expected towards the end of the year, and then we are projecting right now, but again, we're finalizing our build plan and finalizing our numbers. So we're still working with HQ on a couple of things to to finalize and formalize our plans for next year. So we're hoping that probably by the end of first quarter, start of second quarter, we should be under construction if all goes well. So again, it's not an absolute. There still could be some things that change, but that's what we're targeting right now, if not sooner.
And what's the worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario is it doesn't get on the build plan for next year. I don't think that that's the case, but if I'm being honest, that's worst case scenario.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty. One final ask, if you could please just continue to communicate with, the town in terms of, any additional news that you learn about regulatory approvals, just because we're hearing from the community regularly, when's the Verizon tower going to get built? When's it going to get built? And I know I have certainly told people based on the timelines that have been communicated to us, and then had to restate those timelines, multiple times. And, I don't like having to do that. So as soon as you have information about any timelines about, when the regulatory approvals are through, when we think that the construction is going to start, and when we're anticipating completion, that'll certainly, make our lives a lot easier. And I think it would be helpful to the community. And, to the extent that Verizon wants to give all Superior residents a discount for the inconvenience, that would certainly be appreciated as well.
Well, I'm sure that everybody will appreciate it once we are able to get the facility built. Again, regulatory still is one of our biggest gating items. We don't get any really control over that. We're a little bit at the mercy of the reporting agencies. So that, to the best of my knowledge right now, is still targeted towards the end of November, first part of December. So once we've cleared that hurdle, I think we'll be able to give a more definitive answer, because that will also come in terms of alignment with our budget cycle as well. So I will absolutely make sure that we're communicating with Matt at the town so that he can pass on any information, as we know it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Debbie, you had mentioned kind of some potential starting dates for the project. How long would the actual construction take? Is this something that'll be done in a couple weeks or a couple months?
Typically, a macro facility takes 60 to 90 days to build, depending on the type of project. So this isn't a rooftop, obviously. This is going on an existing pole structure. So it should not really take more than the 90 days, barring any sort of unforeseen construction challenge that should come up. So we really should see 60 to 90 days should be estimated completion time once we start.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks again, Debbie. Any final questions from the board?
No questions for Debbie, but I do appreciate you coming here tonight and giving us this update. I'll second what Mark said. I get a lot of questions about when is this happening, because excitement got peaked when this was approved, and it's waning. But Matt, just something I know we've all talked about at the board level is just checking with the other providers, at least annually, to see if they're interested in coming Superior and enhancing their network. So if we haven't done that this year, let's make sure we get those calls on the books. But thank you very much.
The opportunity in front of you all again.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll move on now to our consent agenda, which is item number 3. We've pulled 3E and 3F, and we do have a proclamation for Veterans Day on our consent agenda. Is there a member of the board that I could recruit to read our proclamation for Veterans Day? Mayor Pro Tem Lesis, go ahead.
Okay, a proclamation for Veterans Day. Whereas the willingness of America's veterans to serve our country has earned them our lasting gratitude. And whereas on this, our nation's 66th annual Veterans Day observance, we celebrate and honor the patriots who have fought to protect the democratic ideals that are the foundation of our country. And whereas when the armistice ending World War I was signed on November 11th, 1918, more than 4.7 Americans put down their arms and turned to the work of strengthening our nation. The end of that first global conflict was initially commemorated as Armistice Day. In 1954, the Congress renamed the day as Veterans Day to recognize all those who have served in our armed forces. And whereas throughout our history, citizens from every corner of America have assumed the duty of military life, and whereas such service has required sacrifice, hardship, endurance, dedication, bravery, courage, and the highest level of patriotism. And whereas those who have served our country deserve special attention, and whereas in respect for and recognition of the contributions of servicemen and women have made, the Congress have provided that November 11th of each year shall be set aside as a legal public holiday to honor veterans. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior hereby dedicates and proclaims Wednesday, November 11th, 2020 as Veterans Day in the Town of Superior. And we urge all citizens of Superior to recognize the valor and sacrifice of our veterans and to remember that freedom is not free. And these are the men and women who paid for the freedom for all of us to enjoy today.
Right. Thank you, Mark. Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, and D?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lacy, second by Trustee Ryan, and roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, next is 3E, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Peak One Pool and Spa for the South Pool mechanical room upgrades. And can you pull that item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So just quick question for town staff. So I noted that in the staff memo, it states that in recent years, staff has noted a significant increase in the amount of time and money spent keeping much of the South Pool mechanical room equipment operating in a consistently reliable manner, and heavy seasonal use combined with a recent history of patchwork repairs has proven to be an unreliable operating standard. So Matt, question for you and your team. Is this just a better Band-Aid and this will get us through for another 5-10 years? And I know that we have had talks about having to do actual real maintenance on these pools to get them into their next life cycle since they are aging. How does this play into our life cycle planning? And if we do expand this pool, are we going to need to replace this equipment again when we make those operational upgrades?
I'll have Brian Meyer, our recreation manager, speak to the mechanics of the pool. But I will say that, and I've said in the past that these pools, both north and south, are getting older in age, and they're going to need to get a plan in place, and hopefully the proposed master plan is part of that tells us what we need to do and what we want to do for these two facilities. But this is something we definitely need to do next year, and we try to minimize waste. So any improvements we have for both pools in the future, try to maintain any upgrades we do now into those facilities if we can. Sometimes you can't, but if we can, that's the plan for those. And Brian, he could speak to specifics better for this project.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so this project and these upgrades, these improvements in the pump room at South are very similar to what was performed in the pump room at North back in 2016. Was a little bit more extensive in that case, but and that's we've identified over the last few years a lot of the kind of issues that we've had and been spending time on at South. Specifically have to do with the boilers, and then that water heater is actually due for an upgrade as well. So, South Pool is about 20 years, I think, now since it's been constructed. I think the average life expectancy of an outdoor seasonal pool is roughly 30 years. I think this new equipment will get us going for quite a while, and we won't be spending too much time in there. But like Matt said, definitely, I think myself and Leslie, we're going to be paying attention to the what comes out of the Post Master Plan update, and as far as what we need to concentrate on moving forward with upgrades to not just the pump room, but the facility, both facilities as well. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And Matt, appreciate that as well. And just special thanks, Brian, Leslie, your guys' teams. I really appreciate you guys getting the pools operational this year and having things running as smoothly as they did. It was just fantastic. So thank you very much. And I just want to make sure that we're noting to the board that this is probably something that once we do get that Post Master Plan results back, we should include this within our financial discussion of how we start paying for some of these out year costs. But thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Anyone have anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Ken, go ahead.
Yep. So I move to approve Town Superior Resolution number R-73, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Peak One Pool and Spa for South Pool mechanical room improvements.
All right, is there a second? Trustee Lish, seconds.
Second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lysis.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Motion passes.
And just for the record, I think it was Trustee Shaw seconded Trustee Lish's motion. You said Trustee Lish seconded his own motion.
Sorry, thank you for that clarification. All right, we are on now to item 3F, which is adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Brightview Landscape Services for landscape maintenance, snow removal, and flower service. And Neil, you pulled that item.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Folsom. So one of the reasons I want to pull this is a big contract. It stretches over many years and it covers the entirety of Superior. So I think anything of this size is worthy of a discussion. And then obviously we've been partnered with Vargas for some time, so this is a transition. I think if Leslie's on the call, I do want to talk through a couple aspects of it, because one of the things I find really intriguing about this agreement is the emissions reduction. And, it's all the way on page 36. So Bright, and I haven't looked at the RFP, but what exactly did we specify that we were looking for? Was it, a goal of being zero emissions within, some period of time, or just a desire to be there? Because what Brightview is providing, it does, from my eyes, look to be that by year 4, we're going to be 100%, zero emissions, and we're going to ratchet it down by 25% each year. But it just calls it a emissions-free strategy as opposed to, a specific goal. So if someone could just, help me understand that, that Brightview under this agreement is actually going to be reducing the emissions each year by a quarter, so that by 2025, Brightview is using 100% renewable or 100% battery operated mowers, handheld equipment, batteries, et cetera, et cetera.
I can provide some background information on that. So the initial RFP asked for each proposal to include a strategy and a cost associated with that. What we received back was a wide range of suggestions, but not a lot of detail. So we, after selecting the top 3 vendors in the other categories that we were scoring, we interviewed those top 3 and asked for very specific information regarding their strategy, what they could do over time, and what the cost associated with that was. And what we really heard back was that the handheld equipment is a little bit easier for the companies to accomplish, at least that first year. And then the mowers are pretty expensive. Some of them already have some in their fleet. Some of the vendors were providing low emission or emission reduction services for other vendors that they use, that other municipalities or in some cases, some university areas. When we evaluated the top 3 and the costs that they had associated with that and the growth that they could provide in emissions free over a 4-year contract, we basically were looking at a 25% low emission rate the first year, and then that grows over time. What we're looking at as a response from all the groups was a 25% growth each year over a 4-year period. So by the end of 4 years, they would have 100% emissions free. That allows them to purchase equipment, spread the cost of that equipment over those 4 years. So when we evaluated the costs, our top recommendation, Brightview, came in at a 0 cost increase to do that, which was very, very nice to see, and place them kind of at the top of our choice for that low emission strategy.
So with the other two, Vargas or TerraCare, because presumably you asked them the same question, how much additional expense would have been in the contract for, you know, a path to 0 emissions?
So I have to look at my notes here, and it looks like Vargas had about 152,000 additional each year to provide that, and TerraCare, I don't have those notes right with me, but I can get that real quick.
That's okay. I mean, I think just, you know, Vargas is the nearest competitor. So, you know, at a list price basis, we're 160,000 lower with Brightview than Vargas. And on a comparison basis, if we were to actually compare an apple to an apple with what Brightview is including, we're at about 320,000, 310,000. Is that about accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and then a question I think the Brightview guys are on. Someone's going to have to help me understand what a 25% reduction in emissions means on an annual basis. I understand the starting point, you know, everything is fueled, and the ending point, everything is, you know, electrified. But how are you managing or you know, quantifying a 25% reduction? Is it number of hours worked on an electric mower versus a gas mower, or is it just, you know, number of acres mowed? I'm not too concerned about the 25% per year. It's just a question of, you know, I don't want it to be 10%, you know, for the first 3 years and then have like this massive step down that, you know, 3 years from now we're here, sorry, we can't do it. How are we going to hold them to the contract and the reduction that they say that they're going to hit?
And there are 2 representatives from Brightview here. We have Marcia Pryor and Bradley Hill, who are both on tonight. You can probably provide some insight into that question.
Yeah, if one of those folks are listening, if they could join in and address that question, that'd be great.
Marcy, are you able to unmute? Oh, there's Brad.
Here's Brad. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can you
Our
hear me?
goal.
This is Marcia.
There's Marcia. Our goal is that we assume to have about 4 crews running on this site on a daily basis throughout the season. And so our proposal was basically to outfit one of those as a completely electric crew, minus the truck that runs the crew. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but buying all the mowers. So if you set out each crew equally with, say, 2 60-inch mowers, 2 40-inch mowers, and a 36-inch mower, for example, and then all the handheld equipment like edgers, trimmers, blowers, all that, whether it be hedge trimmers, everything, we have committed to purchasing everything for one full crew. And then each year consecutively, we would buy another crew's worth of equipment. So does that help answer your question?
That is the exact answer I was looking for. Super appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we're committed to, I mean, we realize this is only a 1-year contract with an option for more. You know, we're committed to buying the entire outfit outright if we could get a multi-year contract up front. But of course, you know, we're new to you and we completely understand and appreciate that. So that's why we committed to a 4-year, step program.
From my perspective, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's a lot of capital to lay out up front. So, a quarter crew per year makes a lot of sense to me. That was the extent of the questions that I had. I appreciate you jumping on to help. And Leslie, thanks for the clarifications.
Of course.
Bradley and Marcia, before you guys go anywhere, I had not necessarily a question, but just a comment for you guys. First, thank you for putting in your bid and wanting to come and work with our town. We appreciate it. I know that during the bidding process, I'm sure you came out and looked at the town, and I got a really good feel for the expectations of our residents from a visual standpoint and the high expectations that you're going to be living up to. But one of the things I wanted to touch base on is that your contract is one of the most, if not the most, residential facing contracts our town has. We have a lot of, our community is very active, and there will be lots of interaction between our residents and your crews. And I will say that I hear a lot of comments about the incumbent and that they have an excellent rapport with our residents. And they've set a pretty high bar for what you'll be expected to live up to in our residents' eyes once you take over this contract. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to set a baseline with you guys, and I'm sure your crews are excellent, but our residents are going to be looking for friendly, the willingness to maybe turn off the engine or some of the motors on the equipment when people are walking by with their dogs or their kids. I mean, it's just that the smiles going out of the way. We'll hear about it if you're so I wanted to make sure that you guys heard this up front from us, and that you'll be held to pretty high expectations from a rapport standpoint from our residents.
Understandably.
Yeah, Ken, if I can elaborate a little bit for everyone on the call. We have a policy, and our guys are really great about it, but anywhere near the general public, passersby, pets, they have to power down their mowers, turn off their blades, and really just kind of wait and watch them walk by, whether they're blowing. It really doesn't make a difference. For us, not only is it a respect piece, but it's really about, we are safety eccentric. I mean, it's just really a big thing for us. No matter where we are, we post our signage. We have the arrow boards that light up. We have the mowing ahead signs, whether it be on the trails. It really doesn't make a difference for us. They have to mow with their guards down, so they're not throwing rocks or any debris out. If you have your guards up, it actually spreads out like that instead of going down towards the turf. So we're really so focused on safety that's really just a thing for us.
That's great. Thanks, Bradley. Really appreciate that.
And
You're
if
welcome.
I can add one thing, we're excited about partnering with the town of Superior, and we do see it as a partnership. We immerse ourselves in our communities and participate in things that we can. We're just down the street. We're at near 120th and Wadsworth, basically, and right a neighbor. And we consider being your neighbor. So we look forward to continuing the relationship and showing you what we're all about.
Thank you, Marcia. Looking forward to that partnership as well.
Thank you.
I'll just echo what Trustee Lish has said. I really think that Vargas did a fantastic job serving this community. And I'm looking forward to starting this new partnership with Brightview. You guys have big shoes to fill, but I'm confident that you'll be able to do so. And I trust the recommendation from Parks and Rec staff on going with Brightview. Obviously, the delta between the bids is real money, and that's not even taking into consideration the apples to apples comparison that Trustee Shaw already articulated. So I'm looking forward to working with Brightview, and I hope that I'm sure we're going to hear next spring from our residents of what happened to Vargas. So I think we're all going to have to make an effort to educate the public that we've got a new partner in town, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys can do, because we've got high expectations. We live in a very beautiful community, and all of our residents want to make sure that it continues to resemble the beautiful community that they've come to know and love and appreciate. So welcome to town, and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you. We do appreciate it. And if I may, we'll start with the snow process. So hopefully they really get to know us through that. And we just kind of transition into the green side of the world. So hopefully it all goes very smoothly.
Thank you. The only I was thrilled to see the commitment to the emission reduction, and Brad, really great answer. I was also unsure how that would be measured, but if you have 4 crews and you put 1 crew electric and you make it every year, that's perfect. Really appreciate that. I just want to reinforce what others have said about Vargas. They've been a part of our community for a number of years now. I know a couple of the field guys personally because there's so much open space. And I hope you will look to, as you look to build out your team, I hope you'll consider the Vargas experts for employment at Brightview. So.
Yes, of course.
Great, thank you.
All right, Bradley and Marcia, thanks for being on, and I'll echo the comments of my fellow trustees, and just welcome you to Superior. Thank you for your interest, and we look forward to working with you. All right,
Thank you, sir.
I'll call for any public comment on this item. Any public comment on this item since we pulled it? All right, seeing none, anything further from the board, or I'll entertain a motion to approve. Neil, if you want to do that.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior, resolution number R-74, series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Brightview Landscape Services, LLC for landscape maintenance, snow removal, and flower service.
Second.
All right, motion by Trustee Shaw and second by Trustee Bryan. And roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. And all right, we're on now to item number 4 on our agenda, public hearings and adoptions of resolutions for the amendments to the 2020 budgets. And because we're entering into a public hearing, I will gavel to open the public hearing and verify proof of publication.
Yes, I have publications, 3 of them.
Confirmed. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, we have 3 amendments to the 2020 budget that we need board's approval on, and Paul Mills, our finance director, will walk the board through those.
Thank you, Matt. Paul Nellis, town staff, as a manager identified before the boards and the commissioners' consideration this evening are really administrative matters at the end of the year. We will typically, at the end of each fiscal year, look at our ongoing budgets, identify expenses associated with those budgets, and to keep in line with state law, we need to ensure that budgets are equal to or greater than expenses. So as a result of this, we have amendments in the town budget, our utility budget, which is the Superior Metropolitan District number 1, and our urban renewal budget. What I would like to do perhaps for these ultimately 3 resolutions and 1 ordinance is, in the interest of time, just generally go through all the budget amendments for those 3 different entities. And generally, as a reminder, I guess, for the listening public, these really shouldn't be a surprise for everyone. The board, when it conducted its review of the budgets and during the public hearings and the adoption of the 2021 budgets, we generally had identified these overages, and they are generally included in the 2021 budget. So to that end, let's go ahead and jump in very quick. First, let's start with the Town of Superior budget. We received earlier this year roughly $585,000 in coronavirus relief funds through the CARES Act. So the budget amendment in the general fund is recognition of receipt and spending of these funds. Also within the town budget, within our landscape fee operation, we are proposing a budget amendment of $200,000. The primary driver here is water expenses. Obviously, with the almost historically dry and warm summer, we've seen water expenses in the landscape fee budget exceed budget by over $100,000. We also have some ancillary, a number of other a handful of expenses for playground expenses, fence repairs, things of that nature, which is driving the budget amendment up to $200,000. Within our open space fund, the primary driver of this almost $15.6 million budget amendment is the acquisition of the CenturyLink property. In addition to that purchase, we're proposing another $35,000 of additional improvements suggested by the Open Space Advisory Committee at the Ormond Roche Trailhead. These are things such as signs, maps, bike racks, scenic overlooks. And then also associated with the acquisition of the CenturyLink property, as we had to, one of the funding sources for that particular project was a debt issuance. So we need to recognize additional debt service expenses for that new bond issue. And then the final budget amendment for the town is $1 million within our capital improvements fund. And it's essentially just to recognize when we created the budget last year in summer and fall of last year, we had anticipated improvements at the community building of $2 million. And after community outreach and involving the board and our committees and commissions, we elected on an improvement to approach $3 million, and we acquired a loan earlier in the year for that particular expense. So it's just a recognition that that project is $3 million, and we've secured the funding to that end. Within our utility operation, we are looking at budget amendments. We have 6 different budgets in there. There are capital and operating funds for our water, sewer, and storm drainage program. We need budget amendments in 3 of those funds. The first of those being water operating. We need a $250,000 budget amendment to reflect costs associated with 88th Avenue. When the board approved 88th Avenue improvements back in the spring of this year, we identified we had a number of not only street surface improvements, but we had a number of utility improvements that we were charging to our water, sewer, and storm funds for this particular project that were unbudgeted. The next budget amendment would be in our water capital fund. Many times with our capital improvement program, we plan for a project, we budget it in year 1, but it takes multiple years to complete the project. So what we have are in particular 3 projects within water capital that were effectively budgeted in 2019. The projects were not completed then. We have expenses in 2020. They'll be completed in 2020, and we're just reappropriating funds for those projects. Those projects are within their original appropriation, but we need to allocate funds in 2020. And then the last amendment in our utility operation is in our storm drainage operation, budget amendment of $95,000 for three factors. We are involved with stormwater discharge and permit administration costs. It's called MS4 administration. Those costs were higher than anticipated. engineering services associated with these utility operations were higher than anticipated. And then some utility channel maintenance expenses were higher than we initially budgeted. And again, most of these expenses in general were included and anticipated when developing the 21 budget. And then the final amendment for, in this case, the Urban Renewal Authority Commissioner's consideration is a couple of accounts we have where we recognize the receipt of sales tax revenues within the Urban Renewal Authority. These are essentially clearing accounts where the money comes into these particular budgets, but per some IGAs and agreements, then the monies flow out. The good news in this particular operation is these are sales taxes generated within the Superior marketplaces because of COVID-related buying patterns. Sales tax revenues are materially above initial budget estimates, so we're just recognizing that fact with the SURA budget amendment. I know I went through those items quickly, so if the board has any additional questions, staff is available to answer those.
All right, thanks, Paul. Any questions from the board?
Paul, just one quick question. So the going back to the town budget and looking at the open space line that includes the I think it was $35,000 for improvements at the Ormond Road Trailhead that OSAC recommended. So initially that was a recommendation that was to be funded. At least I think the recommendation came in to be funded in 2021, but we have funds to do it this year, and that's why we are doing it this year. Or am I misunderstanding the history on their recommendation?
No, that's exactly correct, Trustee Lish.
Okay. That's all. Thank you.
And that is out of the open space fund, correct, Paul?
Correct.
Okay, anyone have anything else?
I'm happy to read all of our resolutions tonight.
We do need to do public comment, and just need to go through that step here first. All right, anything further before I open it up for public comment on our resolutions to the budgets? Okay, anyone in the public like to make comment on this agenda item 4 at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll go back to the board. Anything further before I close the public hearing and we move into next phase? Okay.
I just wanted to thank the board for considering the OSAC ask. I think it's going to be a great improvement to the Ormond Road Trailhead. So thanks for considering that.
All right, thanks, Mark. All right, any further discussion, or Ken, if you want to go ahead with reading the resolutions?
Yeah. I make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number
R-75.
75, Series 2020, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2020.
All right, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, and roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks. Motion passes unanimously.
I move to approve Town of Superior ordinance number O-19, Series 2020, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2020.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem, or motion by Trustee Lish, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, and roll call vote, please.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks. Motion passes unanimously. And now we'll do the resolution 4B.
I move to approve Superior Metropolitan District number 1, resolution SMD number 1-8,
8.
series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District number 1, approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2020.
A motion by Director Lish and second by Director Lasis. And roll call vote, please.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks. Motion passes unanimously. And finally, 4C, resolution.
I move to approve Superior Urban Renewal Authority resolution SURA-4,
4.
series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Superior Urban Renewal Authority approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2020.
Right. Motion by Commissioner Lish and second by Commissioner Lasis. Roll call vote, please.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. We're through item 4. We're on to item number 5. We're about 9 minutes to 8. This might be a good point to take a short break before we get into the next agenda item. If the board's okay, we'll take a 5-minute break and be back shortly. Okay, it looks like we're back and ready to move on now to item number 5, which is adoption of a resolution approving the allotment contract between the Windy Gap Firming Project Water Activity Enterprise Municipal Subdistrict, Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District for capacity in the Windy Gap Firming Project. And Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Seems like we've been talking or working on this project for the past 20 years, huh, Paul?
It has been about 20 years.
Yeah. We're at a point where we're looking to secure financing for the project. So things are moving forward. So that's exciting and good news. Tonight we have Paul Zilas, town's water attorney here, as well as Alex and Paul are also presenting this item. We're going to start off with a presentation from Paul Zilas, our water attorney, and then we'll open it up to any questions and comments the board may have about the contract itself. With that, Paul?
Great. Well, it's good to see the board members that I've met before, and good to see the board members I haven't met yet. I've been the town and the district water attorney for a lot of years. And as Matt said, tonight we're talking about the Windy Gap Firming Project. It really is very exciting to be presenting to this. We've been entering into annual contracts for over 17 years. And it's so great to see light at the end of the tunnel that we can actually finally build this exciting project for Superior. What I thought I'd do, if it makes sense to everybody, is start with a brief background of, Colorado water law and our water portfolio to put everything into context. I will not drone on and on, but I think it's important to understand what the Firming Project means for the town and the district. And then Martin was going to put up a PowerPoint.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, great. So if I could have that first slide, or can I do that myself? Oh, I guess you have to. So as I said, you guys, I'm not going to drone on and on. I'm going to cover, semester of law school here in 2 lines for Colorado water law, but hopefully that'll really put things in perspective. So in Colorado, water is administered on what we call the appropriation doctrine. And the appropriation doctrine is just a law that says the older, more senior water rights have the better right to take water over junior, newer water rights when there's not enough water. And as you'll see as we go through the presentation tonight, that's a really important aspect to understand with the Windy Gap Firming Project. And it's really interesting. As I said, I could go on and on, but the bottom line is that, the South Platte River, for instance, is called over-appropriated. There's never enough water to satisfy all of the water rights. So that's how we administer water. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is a unit of measure that you won't hear anywhere else except in water law, which is an acre foot. And an acre foot is 325,851 gallons. So if I could have the next slide. Oh, great. So as I said, you guys, I want to just talk about our portfolio really quickly to put things in perspective. As you can see, the vast majority of our water is made up of Windy Gap units and CBT units, Colorado Big Thompson units. And both of those are in a system, the Colorado Big Thompson system, that is administered and operated by the Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District, also known as just Northern. And then they have a municipal sub-district that runs the Windy Gap project. And then, of course, just to make things more complicated, we've got the Windy Gap Firming Project Water Activity Enterprise, which is the actual entity in the allotment contract, but that's really for Tabor purposes and the like. But it's the Northern District and the municipal sub-district. So to understand our water just a little bit here, we own 15 Windy Gap units, and the yield of those units is about 90 acre feet per unit, or a total of 1,350 acre feet for our 15 units. There are 480 units total in that project, and there will never be another unit issue. So the Windy Gap units are very valuable to us. The biggest attribute for them is that they're reusable. So they are the basis, our sole basis for our entire reuse system for all of our irrigation. So they're a really big part of our water portfolio. When you reuse the water, that 1,350 acre feet translates to about 2,100 acre feet because you reuse an average of about 64%. The other water rights in our portfolio are the CBT units, and we have 2,080 of those units. And the firm yield of that water is about 1,248 acre feet. The big difference is that CBT is not reusable. And there are 310,000 units in the CBT project, just like the Windy Gap project. There will never be another unit issued. These were all authorized in federal legislation, and that's what we have. And again, you guys, to put things in perspective, I'm not here to talk about money in any detail tonight, but it's interesting that Colorado Big Thompson units are more senior than Windy Gap, and they can be used by anybody within that northern district without even going to water court. And of those 310,000 units, there's probably only about 30,000 more that will change, and the district goes all the way out to Nebraska. A lot of people competing for that water. The bottom line is that we bought our CBT units for about $11,000 per unit. They are now up to $62,000 per unit. That translates to over $100,000 an acre foot. So I love to share these numbers because it makes us look so smart, even though we didn't have anything to do with it. But we spent about $23 million at about $11,000 per unit, and it might be Superior's biggest asset. The CBT units are now worth $128 million. The CBT units the Windy Gap units, to kind of put it in perspective, will cost in the neighborhood of about $30,000 per acre foot if you include both the water rights and the firming project. That gets reduced to about $21,000 per acre foot when you get the reuse component. So not only the important water right for Superior, but they are, despite big numbers, they're very affordable. And to be honest, I don't think we could afford to backfill Windy Gap units with CBT units at those prices anymore. And then we've also got some various dish shares, but that's a minor part of our portfolio. So if I could have the next slide. So
can I stop you there for a second,
sure,
Paul? So based on the, that's really interesting in terms of just the value of the water units. I'm not suggesting, selling it, but based on the appreciation of any of the water units, in terms of the value, have there been any municipalities or counties or any other, water purchasers that are leveraging the appreciation of those water units to fund other capital projects that, if it's our biggest asset, it might just be a source of capital for us to do projects. And if we're talking about, municipal finance issues, is that a potential source of, assets that we could, borrow against for purposes of doing something in the future? Or is there anything unique to water law that would prevent us from doing so?
No. So, municipalities really don't like to encumber their water rights because they're so important. That being said, with that kind of value, yes, you can encumber them. And there's a process to do that through that northern district. So, whenever you buy units, you do a title report because so many of them are encumbered. But to answer your question, yes, you could.
Thank you.
Sure. So again, you guys, to just give background on where this is all coming from, this is a map of the Northern District. And as you can see, it is vast. It includes all the facilities on the west slope. And you probably know most of them. It's Lake Granby, Grand Lake. It comes over through the Continental Divide, through Estes Park, down into Carter Lake near Loveland, Horsetooth Reservoir near Fort Collins, Boulder Reservoir south. And believe it or not, Superior gets all of its water from a pipeline out of Carter Lake called the Southern Water Supply Project Pipeline. The CBT project was built by the Bureau of Reclamation, and it was actually in reaction to the Dust Bowl. I mean, goes back that far, but they needed a big water project. And, you could never build this project again today, but that's a CBT. And then if you look carefully at that map, to just the west of Lake Granby, you'll see a little dot, and that's the Windy Gap Reservoir. And the Windy Gap Reservoir is basically just a forebay for the pumping plant. So they pump it into Windy Gap and then through the CBT system and over to the east slope. So next slide, please. So the Windy Gap project, there we go. Windy Gap project has been around since the 60s, and the yields have been unreliable. And that's because, getting back to my first slide, it's a more junior water right. So in dry years, like this summer, that was so hot and dry, it didn't pump any water. It's a double whammy because in wet years, when Lake Granby is spilling, Windy Gap is the first water to spill out of Granby because, it's junior to the CBT system in that storage reservoir. So in the 90s, Windy Gap spilled most years, in the wet years. So that is kind of the background, but it's safe to say since the project was contemplated back in the early 60s, they've always thought that they needed another project to firm the yield of the Windy Gap units. So that's been part of the whole game plan since Windy Gap was devised. And, it's a blessing in disguise, but when Superior started to develop, they were not allowed into the Northern District. They could only get in the municipal sub-district. So the original water supply for Superior was 35 Windy Gap units. But again, with the unreliability, it was, a real challenge. So Superior finally pushed and we got into the district, and then we sold 20 of our Windy Gap units to buy those CBT units. So now we have a really nice mix of water rights. Next slide, please. So as we said at the outset, we've been on this project for a long time. I say in the slide since 2003, it actually started in 2001, just, when it was first getting going. And basically, when I said, we need to have a way to firm up the yield, it's just going to be a really large reservoir that's going to store water in average and above average years. So in those wet years and dry years, when right now our Windy Gap units have zero yield, we can just release our water from storage. And the storage to yield ratio is about 3-to-1. And we'll have 4,726 acre feet in this big, large reservoir. And there's 12 participants, including Superior, and it's all municipalities and districts. Next slide. So to put it in perspective again, as you can see on this diagram, the Chimney Hollow Reservoir is the one that's going to store the water. And as you can see, it's directly west of Carter Lake. And for those of you that know Carter Lake, when you look at it from the east, there's a big hogback that arises on the west side of Carter. And this is just on the other side of that hogback. And it's going to be almost the same size as Carter. Carter's 110,000 acre feet. This will be 90,000. Next slide. Here's a better diagram to kind of give you how they're sized and how they're located next to each other. And then there'll be facilities, obviously, to take water from Chimney Hollow over to Carter. And that way, as I said, in those years where Windy Gap is not yielding any water, Superior would get its full entitlement out of Chimney Hollow. Next slide. This is a good picture of that actual hogback. So on the right side, you can see just the corner of Carter. And then the proposed reservoir site is just that big open valley. And again, it's always feels good to be smart in hindsight. But just like the CBT units, the participants in the firming project bought that entire reservoir site in 2004 for $4 million from Hewlett Packard. So that's been in our control for a long time. Next slide. And then I promise I'm going probably too deep already into water rights. I promise I won't go into engineering, but it's really interesting to those of us that find it interesting that the dam for the Windy Gap firming project at Chimney Hollow is actually an asphalt core dam, and it has been peer reviewed internationally. It's been through unbelievable review, and it's been completely approved now. It's been designed and we're ready to go. Next slide. So, I've already covered a lot of this. What portfolio is diversification. So it allows us to retain those CBT units. And I'm not sure who asked the question, but they're very valuable. And if we did want to leverage those, we could. As I said, the CBT units are a more senior water right, but Windy Gap can be reused. And it's that blend that's so important to us. The Windy Gap provides the ability to serve any of the quality development that comes our way. And the firming project is what really gives us the ability to move forward with a firm water supply. And because it's our only reusable source, the Windy Gap firming project will firm up not only our potable supply, but our entire non-potable supply for multiple year droughts. So it really is a backbone of is going to be a backbone of our water portfolio. Next slide. And as I said, our 15 Windy Gap units will generate sufficient water for all of our projected growth. I shared a couple emails with Neil earlier today, but staff has been really diligent at defining what that number is. And based on our current demands and then some infill within the town, and then of course the town center project. The Windy Gap firming project will allow us to have a firm water supply for all future demands. Another really important component, I think, for any municipality is to be as environmentally responsible as you can. And the reuse of water is really, really an important benefit. It decreases water diversions from the stream system and you get to reuse it. And as you all are aware, you know, our reuse water is used for parks and open space. And it's just been a huge asset for Superior. Superior is actually very fortunate that, you know, it's a newer town, so it built its reuse system early on, where most municipalities are having to retrofit. The other big thing is that it's deliverable through all of our existing facilities. So that pipeline from Carter will deliver this water just like it does all of our other. So there's no additional expenses there. Next. So, you know, you got the big question's got to be, all right, so it's been 17 years. What the heck you been doing? So, because, as I said, it's a Bureau facility, it's all federal permitting, and it is amazing how long this can take. But I just made a partial list tonight just so you can kind of see what we've been through. So we have the final EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement. We got 1041 approval from Grand County. I don't know how aware you are of 1041, but you know that's a way for the county to have say-so over projects of state interest. And it's been used as a tool by a lot of counties to fight water development. So Northern and the participants really dug in, and we got a good 1041 agreement. I feel really good cooperating with Grand County and all the entities over there. We have a state 401 certification, which means that we're meeting all of our water quality criteria. We got the final record of decision, the ROD, from the Bureau of Reclamation, which, believe it or not, took even more time after the EIS. But then we had to negotiate a whole new carriage agreement with the Bureau because now we've got the Chimney Hollow project in addition to the Windy Gap units that are coming through the CBT system. And then we negotiated an IGA with the West Slope, which was really important. And we've actually got a lot of advocates for the project on the West Slope, which is kind of unusual, but we've really tried to bring benefits to the West Slope. And based on all that, believe it or not, after all these decades, this is the first water project in Colorado that's actually been endorsed by the governor. Governors really stay away from water projects because they're controversial, but I felt really good about that. Next slide. So we just got our state water decree issued. Big news is the original Windy Gap bonds for the Windy Gap project have now been defeased. The final design, as I said a minute ago, has been completed. We got a financial advisor and bond counsel on board. A construction firm has been hired. The construction contract has been executed. And when we start, we will be the biggest construction project in the state. And right now we're anticipating construction from 2021 through 2024 and water should start flowing. The one last hurdle is that, of course, after all the permitting was issued, some environmental groups sued the Bureau and the Army Corps of Engineers to say that all of these analyses are still not sufficient. And we feel very optimistic about the outcome of that litigation. There was a similar lawsuit filed by the same groups against the reoperation of Chatfield Reservoir down south, and it was upheld in federal court. But it's holding up a $500 million project. And, you know, the irony is that the West Slope entities have all supported us, and even Trout Unlimited filed a brief on our support. But the groups that have filed the litigation are able to hold up a project, but we're hoping it'll get resolved very, very soon. Next slide.
So what is the status of that litigation? Is there a trial pending? Is it going through appeal? Is it motions practice? What's the status?
It's motions practice. That's a really good question. And we finally heard, I mean, it's just been sitting dormant. And, you know, the great ironies in life, the judge that's going to hear it, I went to law school with, but I can't poke him in the side and say, get going. But that being said, it is going to be motions practice. So the bottom line is what they're doing right now is they're certifying the record, which, as you can imagine, after 17 years of permitting is immense. All that stuff has already been submitted. So for the briefing, the judge is requesting kind of a digest of that. And my gut feel is that we've got motions for summary judgment pending, that we're going to get it done without a trial. So that's the status. But it's
who's the judge?
Tikmenovich down in a federal district court. And, you know, like so many federal dockets, it was with a different judge to start, and then it got, you know, turned over to Tim, and then it's kind of been sitting dormant. So we're doing I should say the Northern and the municipal subdistrict are doing the best they can. They're litigating on behalf of the participants. But while that's happening, we continue to move forward because we really need to. And over the last year, we secured a loan. There's a little typo here from the Colorado Water Conservation District instead of Conservancy. But we have $90 million they've committed to at 2.08% interest. However, to secure that loan, we need to commit as the participants in 2020. And that's why the allotment contract is before you tonight, while the federal litigation is still pending, is because, you know, that deal is just fantastic for the project. So it's going to require an allotment contract executed by all 12 participants and the Water Activity Enterprise. But it's that allotment contract has been discussed for over a year with all the participants and bond counsel and finance advisors. And I'll get into that in a little more detail in a minute. But once we get that allotment contract signed, as I said, the whole idea is to commence construction immediately upon resolution of the federal litigation. Next slide.
Hey, Paul, real quick before you move along. So going back to that litigation, can you speak a little bit to what happens in the unlikely event that we do not prevail in that litigation? What happens to funds we've already contributed to the project, and what happens to this agreement we are considering this evening?
Okay, that's a really good question. We, of course, wouldn't go ahead with the financing. And with the CWCB loan, we don't have to take those funds until we start construction. So what we're really talking about is the money that we have invested to date. Right now, it's been about $62 million, of which Superior has contributed about $3.5 million over the course of 17 years. That being said, this project has been, you know, on the books and, you know, gone through so much effort that if we were not to prevail, you know, it'd be up to the participants. But I would definitely say, you know, that the next action should be to try to address whatever shortcomings the court would find in the permitting. So, I mean, the lawsuit is only about the permitting for the project. So that is usually resolvable, but it would be another delay. The bottom line, though, too, you guys, is that we're not going to take on any debt until we're ready to start construction. So right now, the risk that we have is the $3.5 million that we've, you know, expended over 17 years.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So, so anyway, as I said a minute ago, this contract's been negotiated for over a year. We've interacted with, you know, town and district staff and our finance director. And as I said, it's really been thoroughly vetted. And it basically, the reason is, you know, you can see in your packet, it's such a long agreement. It provides all the rights, obligations, financing, alternatives, and relationship of the parties. But an interesting provision that was added right before we got this final form for your review tonight was paragraph 6.2.1.1. And what that does is that provides the flexibility for the participants to choose financing options up to 3 months prior to the issuance of the bonds. And that came about because there's some participants that do have cash in the bank and they'd rather not do the group financing if the terms change while that federal litigation is pending. So the choices are, there's pooled financing that will be available, and then there's cash financing, and then obviously entities can finance themselves. Right now, we've coordinated really closely with bond counsel and bond underwriters, and the interest rate's about 2.5%. And I represent 3 entities, I'm sorry, in this project. And, you know, they've all looked at it in detail and have come to the conclusion that the pooled financing really is the best way to go. The biggest thing about pool financing on this last bullet right here is that the bonds will be considered debt of the district of Northern and not of the participants. So they are characterized as costs and expenses rather than debt. So they don't tie up your bonding capabilities or anything else. And that's really one of the biggest points for doing the pooled financing. Next slide. So as I said, right now we're participating in the pooled financing. And right now Superior has elected to go with 20-year amortization. And when you look at the spreadsheets at 2.5% interest, the maximum annual payment would be about 1.648 million. And as the project goes down the tracks here, you know, if we get a big delay or something with the litigation, the provision that added flexibility to decide how you want to finance also gives us the flexibility that if the terms come out and all of a sudden we want to switch to 30-year amortization, we could do that also. And those decisions just have to be made within 3 months of the issuance of the bonds. And I'll keep in close touch as it moves forward. So as I said, you guys, it's imperative that we get it executed because that gets us the CWCB loan availability. Again, we'd have the flexibility for future financing depending on the terms. So as Matt kind of kicked off my probably overly long presentation, this is really exciting for to finally have the allotment contract that will push the project forward and make financing available. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Paul, for that information.
Sure.
Questions, additional questions? Okay, I guess everything was answered.
Let me just add this, Paul. I appreciate all the feedback, throughout the day, and I appreciate that you and staff have been working on this for quite some time. And just so the rest of the board is kind of aware of the Q&A that I was having with Paul, for Laura and Ken, we came onto the board 2 years ago. Windy Gap hasn't been discussed in this level of detail, so I appreciate you guys coming in. And I think more importantly, the part that I've been bouncing around in my head is we talk a lot about what Windy Gap and what Windy Gap's going to add to the water portfolio, but the question I haven't seen discussed is, what is our demand profile going to look like? Paul, can you answer that a little bit more? And then I know Alex is on the line as well, because obviously a lot of this is about where the population is going to grow with downtown. And, as we start to see more projects come in, they're all coming in real low water use. And then, I think we as a community have been continually talking about reducing the amount of water that we use on landscaping. And I think, the neighborhoods, Rock Creek especially, are looking at ways to take out some of the thirsty green grass. How do these all play into reducing that demand profile?
Sure, I'll be glad to start, and Alex can certainly add. But what we've done over the years, and I totally understand that those of you that haven't been involved haven't heard all this, but the bottom line is we keep very close tabs on how much water we use every year. And to our credit, the use per capita has been decreasing. But, again, Superior is such a new town that, everybody's got low water use, facilities in the house, and the yards are not overly big. And we've got that great reuse system. And that really is the key to keeping our potable water demands down. But the last we looked at this, we looked at the total current potable demand. And then we added, based on everything we know about the future developments coming in, the water that's going to be needed for some of the infill projects, and then the total estimated demand for town center. And it comes to 2,768 acre feet. And the Windy Gap, the CBT, and the DID shares meet that demand with the firming project. The other thing is with the non-potable, we also looked at that. And the demand will be, we think it build out about 843 acre feet. And again, when we firm up the Windy Gap units, we'll meet that demand as well.
I can just jump in at, Neil, we started with our comprehensive plan and looked at all the developments that could potentially be underway with and built out with the comprehensive plan. And that's what we've been working with Paul for a number of years on that. What we don't know, at the town center, obviously we have development that's occurring there, that's townhomes and very dense development. Most of their irrigation needs will be provided through our reuse system, rather than individual lawns and so forth, because there's very little of that. So we haven't fine-tuned it based on what's actually happening, but I think it's going to be pretty close. Down the road, we have an asset there. And if we determine at some point that we're all built out, we don't need any more water, we have an asset we could lease out or sell to other entities, but we don't anticipate that. We would be conservative in holding onto those pretty indefinitely. Of course, we always want to conserve water. We have several programs that we are implementing to look at that, provide guidance and help to our residential users to cut down on their water use. So I think that's where we're standing, that this is a good investment, and it really this year, for example, we're really pushing it to try to make sure we have enough water to make it through, and we've taken some steps to lease some water out so we have carryover for next year.
All right, I appreciate that, Alex. And I guess that you said something in there that I hadn't really thought about in the sense it's an options contract. If we need the water, we'll have it. If we don't, we can sell it and move on. I think that helps me out a lot. Thank you.
Okay, anyone have anything else? I'll offer an opportunity for public comment. Anyone in the public like to make any comments on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, go back to the board. Anything further? I'll entertain a motion. Anyone?
Make a motion to approve Town of Superior Superior Metropolitan District number 1, resolution number SMD number 1-9, series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District number 1, approving the allotment contract with the Windy Gap Firming Project Water Activity Enterprise Municipal Subdistrict, Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District for capacity in the Windy Gap Firming Project.
Okay, a motion by Director Lesa, second by Director Lish, and roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Skwadziński,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously, and thank you, Paul, for your information.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to meeting you all in person one of these days.
Thank you. All right, we're on to item number 6, which is adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Waste Connections for solid waste collection services.
Thank you, Mayor. In 2008, the town decided to enter in a agreement with a third-party contractor to provide trash and recycling services to residents that really weren't in the Rock Creek HOA service contract, which was basically at the time original town, Sagamore, the Ridge, and the first phase of the Calmonte development. At that time, in 2008, the town did an RFP and selected Waste Connections to provide those services. The main reason the town decided to go down this path was to lower the cost to those residents that were not a part of the Rock Creek HOA contract, which was also with Waste Connections and still is to this day. The contract was rebid in 2011 and 2015 and maintained with Waste Connections at that time. This year, we rebid the contract as it's set to expire at the end of this year. We had 2 qualified bids from Waste Connections and Western Disposal. Based on board's discussion, Waste Connection provided the lowest qualified bid based on the services that we received direction from the board on at the work session that we held last Monday. So for board's consideration tonight is an agreement with Waste Connections to provide weekly trash and recycling service, which is a change. The current contract provides recycling collection every 2 weeks. So the change with this agreement and Waste Connections would provide weekly recycling services at the cost of $9.65 to residents with an inflationary possible increase on the annual renewal dates. I'm sorry, $965 is $13, sorry, $13 per month to residents for the weekly recycling and trash pickup. Staff is recommending approval of this contract with Waste Connections. And Jeff Stewart with Waste Connections, thank you for attending the meeting, is on with us in case the board has any questions for Waste Connections on the agreement or of staff.
All right, thanks, Matt, and welcome, Jeff. Appreciate you being here. Oh, you were muted there. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Folsom.
All right. Any board members have questions?
I have a couple of questions. Jeff, thank you for being here with us tonight. And again, I appreciate your firm putting in the bid to do work with us. And I appreciate the work you've already been doing with us throughout the town. Just a side note before I get into my questions, I really do appreciate the friendliness of your drivers. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old myself, and the highlight of the week is chasing the garbage and recycling trucks down the roads. And on more than one occasion, your drivers have gone out and given us coloring books. And that's a true highlight. I really appreciate that type of relationship with the community. It goes a long way. But with that aside, questions for you. So noting in the bid, I believe it said that your trucks currently run on diesel. Are there any plans to expand or convert any of the fleet to be powered by renewable natural gas or compressed natural gas or any other type of renewable power source?
Right now, as an organization across the country, where we are implementing CNG and electric, beginning to test electric trucks as well. Right now, for the Denver market, it's not in our 5-year plan, so to speak, but that could change with incentives and whatnot, because it is a very, very capital intensive project to take on with, we have nearly 200 trucks. And so you have to outfit the yards and it's just very, very capital heavy. So to answer your question right now, for the duration of this agreement, I would say we'll still be operating diesel.
Okay. And then another question for you. So the optional service for the yard waste / organics that is biweekly, that is capped by just an April and October timeframe. Can you speak a little bit to why that's capped and if there's any possibility to be able to make that a year-round service at some point?
Well, it initially was the initial program was set for green waste, and so with the climate here in Colorado, those were the timeframes we put forth. We have discussed lengthening it out to be a year-round program, and we certainly will take that into account as we get more customers online. Right now, it's a minimal amount, so in order to expand that, we would have to see an increase in the numbers as well.
Okay. And I'm hoping that you do see an increase in those numbers, not just with our contract, but with the Rock Creek HOA contract as well. But just passing on some feedback that I've received from our residents is that type of year-round service would be greatly appreciated. Another question. So in the scope of services, there is a requirement to develop and execute a public education to encourage waste reduction and diversion. Can you speak a little bit about what that means to you and what you all do to that end?
Well, first and foremost, we want to get out. Your community does a great job already, and we want to make sure we grow and partner with you to meet your diversion needs. First and foremost, with the going to weekly, we'll send out a flyer reiterating what we take, and then we will work with the community, Emily and Martin, to just to see where we want to spend our time. If there's if the town has, we've had a lot of success in the past where towns will have some type of event that we'll have a tent at to where we can really, we're face to face with our customers, and we can, we've got fun facts about recycling, and just that face to face involvement is where we see our biggest impact.
No, that's great. And one of the things we have here in Superior is we have an advisory committee for environmental sustainability, ACES. They're one of the things that they've been working towards for the past few years is increasing our diversion rate and making true headway in that regard. If they have any ideas, questions, or see areas where some type of partnership might be useful, would you all be amenable to maybe having a meeting or having some type of discussion between you all and them to explore ideas?
Absolutely. We would welcome that.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate these answers, and thank you for coming and joining us this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone have anything else? All right. And Ken, I'll just say that the trash truck enthusiasm doesn't end at your age group. I've got a 15-year-old who's still very, very into them as well. And I'll also appreciate the great friendliness and great service we get from Waste Connections. So really appreciate the partnership that you provide both on this contract and the Rock Creek contract as well. So it's great to have one hauler taking care of the whole town. So.
Yes, we appreciate you guys and that partnership.
Great. Okay. Anyone have anything further, or I'll entertain a motion to move this item forward.
I'm happy to make a motion. Do we want to open it up to public comment before that, Clint?
Thank you. Yes, thanks for that reminder. Anyone in the public like to make a comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, we'll go back to the board.
I'm happy to make a motion to approve the Town of Superior resolution number R-76 Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Waste Connections of Colorado Incorporated to provide residential trash and recyclables collection services.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Trustee Shaw, and roll call vote, please, Phyllis.
Ryan?
Yes.
Lish?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Kwasinski? Swazinski?
Yes.
Thanks. Lasis?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think you got me, but I'll vote yes. And motion passes. That's all right. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks again, Jeff. And we'll be on to our next agenda item, which is item number 7, adoption of a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement and bylaws for the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable.
Thank you, Mayor. Myself and Kevin Colon on our staff have been working over the past several months with a number of cities and counties on IGA and bylaws to establish a community noise roundtable for the airport. Members of this group that we've been working with include Jefferson County, Boulder County, City and County of Broomfield, Arvada, Westminster, and Louisville. Which we've gotten to a point where we have brought forth the IGA and bylaws for your consideration for adoption. If adopted by all the members in this group, the hope is to have the first meeting set for by the end of the year or early after the first of the year. The IGA outlines purpose of the roundtable, membership, procedures, funding, and terms, while the bylaws outline the members, non-member entities, community participants, powers and duties of the board, meetings, voting, and committees, as well as member dues and work program. We set a goal, the group did, to have the bylaws and IGA approved by the end of October. I think everybody's on schedule to do that. As part of this, the board would need to also identify and select 2 members of the board, a primary and an alternate. They could be elected officials or staff. I think our recommendation is that the primary be an elected official. And then if the alternate could be another board member or a staff person. We expect to have costs of $3,600 right now is anticipation for this roundtable, which is primarily for the cost to cover a facilitator for the group. Our recommendation is approval of the IGA and bylaws, and we can get started and start having meetings. Kevin, anything I left out or you want to cover?
Nope, that's it. You covered it well. And trustees, you have been close to this project for a while now, blending your, personal help and building relationships with the airport and the flight schools. And so this is the next step in that process.
Any questions or comments?
So a couple questions or observations. First, I'd say this is not, I think the purpose of the roundtable for me is a lot, right? I mean, I think we're clearly going to talk about noise. We're going to talk about possible environmental issues related to pollution. The roundtable will have hopefully better visibility into future expansion, commercial, who the tenants are. I think the roundtable does a lot. I think there's a few strategies around noise mitigation, and this I'd say is probably the tip of the spear. But I just want to reinforce from my perspective, I don't think participation of this roundtable is the kind of sole way that I expect there to be collaboration with the tenants, particularly the flight schools, Director Anslow, or anybody else. I just think that this is part of being part of the community and participating, and the FAA encouraged it. So I'm, of course, supportive of it. So that's just number one. I just don't want people to think, most I think everybody on the board recognizes this, but for those at home, this is not the exhaustive strategy that will be deployed for noise mitigation. And second, since I think I read in the minutes that the first meeting in December or the next board meeting will decide the assignments for trustees. And so hopefully tonight we could adopt this resolution without necessarily assigning a primary and an alternate, because it sounds like we're not going to meet until, earliest we meet is December, realistically January, and there's going to be a new board by then. So I think those committee assignments are up for discussion in that first December meeting.
Yeah. We could do that in December. I think we were hoping that we could make assignments at the meeting tonight as part of the approval. And then if we needed to make any revisions in December based on the election, we could do that at that time as well, if the board's comfortable with that.
I mean, Matt, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought there was an intent to try to get the assignments done tonight also. That way the actual work could get started between now and December. And if we don't appoint somebody this evening, that could be a potential delay in getting the activity of the roundtable started. Is that a true statement?
I think all the member groups that have been discussing this, that was the intent, was for the members to be selected, the members of the roundtable be selected in October. And then there's provisions in these agreements to make changes if we need to.
I do want to, the agreement itself says that it won't be effective until the first day of December. So is there a possibility of a meeting before December 1st?
I don't think so. There looks like some other municipalities are voting on this in November. So we do have a few staggered.
I mean, where I was going with this comment is that I absolutely want this to be up for consideration when we go through our committee assignments with the new board, whoever happens to be on it once we reconvene. But I also don't want there to be a delay. I noted that, as Matt pointed out, there there are measures within the IGA and the bylaws to adjust our appointments as necessary. So if we were to make an appointment this evening, there's no reason why we couldn't adjust that appointment once we have a new board. I would just hate for us, after pushing for so hard for so long, to be a reason for any type of delay if we don't appoint anybody this evening.
Laura, I think your question about the next meeting, you're asking about this board. Why can't this board meet in November? Is that accurate?
No, sorry, I was asking about the RMMA board.
Okay.
If the agreement doesn't go into effect until December 1st, it seems like logically there wouldn't be a meeting before that. I would rather try to do all the committee assignments at once, given that we're so close. But that if there's a possibility of getting work done before then yeah, absolutely, let's assign it. I just don't want us to pick someone today and then.
Well, yeah, I could see in November some communications starting about trying to schedule the first meeting and those type of things. And if we don't have somebody selected tonight, I'm sending that to everybody on the board, which may be okay. But if we have some members selected tonight, we can just include those on those communications. And then if we need to make adjustments, it's simply a written notice to the chair of the roundtable of what the change could be. So it's a pretty simple process.
I mean, that's fine by me as far as a process thing. I just don't want us to, at our first meeting in December, go back to, oh, well, Neil said in November he wanted to do it, so we have to stick with Neil for it when we haven't seen the rest of it. That's, as long as our board says, we're up for changing it, then that's fine. Neil, maybe you'll be awesome on it, not trying to.
Just for record, maybe an alternate, that's all. Hey, I do want to say, and I don't want to deviate from the topic of who's on the board. Thanks to staff for pulling this together. I think a number of us from the board with the FAA meeting last year, and it's been more than a year. And I think we all walked out of that thinking, what was that meeting? Because it didn't feel like anything happened other than a stiff arm, very senior stiff arm from the FAA. But in hindsight, and what I've learned in the last year, the FAA is doing what it has to do. It has to ensure, it's obligated by law to make sure that all the surrounding communities have weighed in. So I'm happy that we're finally here, but actually I also want to point out, what's really promising about how the IGA is structured, the advisory board. A complaint we've consistently heard from the community is the airport advisory board is stacked with people that are really working in interest of the airport and the airport alone, which is fine. But fundamentally, that is completely at odds as in what it is that the roundtable is supposed to do. And the roundtable is actually going to be staffed with elected officials. So those are the ones that are, they have to listen to their residents to get reelected. They're appointed, specifically to service a job. The airport advisory board serves a very different role, and I think it's important to point this out for our community, because all we've heard about for the last, I don't know how many years, is that the airport advisory board consistently says, you guys parked your homes next to the airport. This is not our problem. I think the roundtable is going to be a fantastic first step about having a collaborative discussion around airport operations. But as Kevin said, this is not the only step. There are a lot of other things that we have to continue to stay engaged on. So I'm an absolute yes on the resolution. No questions there. If we do have to pick a body, I'm not interested in being on the board, but I would be happy to be an alternate. I think my own personal bias is I think Kevin or Mark would be valuable to the advisory board just on the work that you guys have both done. And you both live a little bit closer to the flight path than the rest of us.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I mean, that's right. I mean, I appreciate the comments, and I want to be sensitive to the fact that there's an election coming up, and probably only so much we could talk about it in this board meeting, but I'd love to be the designee for this. So the challenge will be for me, we'll just, anyway, so but I'd love to find a way to make this work. So.
I appreciate that also, Neil. It was kind of interesting when we were talking about airport issues. last week at the work session, Superior is not a big town, but we are spread out in terms of where we all reside, and I do think that the airport impacts those who live south of Colton more acutely than those who live north of Colton. I agree. I think Kevin would be a great pick. I'd be happy to serve as well. I'm certainly not counting any chickens before they're hatched. So, we've got an election coming up, and, hopefully I'll be back here, and I'd be happy to serve as either the primary or the alternate. I'd kind of defer to Kevin in terms of what he would want to do.
Yeah, but I think Laura made a good point before. I mean, there's always a little bit of, for those that are watching, there's always a little bit of horse trading for the committee assignments, and so I already have I have the 2 best committees now. This will be the 3rd best committee, so I can't get all 3 of my choices. But this is for me, I think just too important for our entire town, and I'm pretty invested in the process, so I'd love to continue.
I have no objection to you two being appointed this evening as the primary and the alternate. I do want to just level set expectations for our community. And Kevin, you'd started by trying to describe what we can expect out of this roundtable and discussions around environment and operations and plans going forward. But I just want to make sure that it's clear to our community that the purpose of this roundtable is only to discuss noise. It does not actually talk about environmental impact. It does not talk about the expansion or growth plans of the airport outside of how that will impact Superior from a noise perspective. So while this will give us a tremendous platform that we have not had before and will make a huge difference, it's not going to give us the opportunity to discuss those issues and make changes there. So I fully agree. We will have lots more to do in other forums, but this will be the forum to hopefully start addressing our noise issues.
All right, I'm supportive as well of Kevin and Mark being on the group. Okay, anything further?
Are we going to open it up to public comment?
Yes, we will. All right, is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing none. Go back to someone like to make a motion on the resolution.
Make a motion to approve. I guess we don't have a resolution. We just have the actual IGA. So I'll make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement establishing the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable.
Can we make that a resolution 77, Kendra?
Yeah, there should have been.
Yeah, there is one in Granicus now.
Yeah, it came in late.
Let me refresh. There it is. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-77, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an intergovernmental agreement and bylaws for the Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport Community Noise Roundtable.
Second.
Okay, I had a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis and second by Trustee Shaw, and roll call vote, please.
Lasis,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks. Motion passes unanimously. And we're now on to item number 8, which is adoption of a resolution approving the naming of the CenturyLink property open space.
Clint, look at the time.
Yeah.
Hey, what can I say?
Okay, I mean, that's
We're-
it's right.
We were behind and now we're not. What can I
No,
say?
it's just impressive. I don't think you've ever landed, literally, you landed that airplane perfectly.
Hey, I work a lot with airplanes, landing them.
Not his first rodeo.
Yep. Thanks. Okay, Matt, want to go ahead and welcome Brian Welch?
Yeah, the Open Space Advisory Committee has been working, and gone through a process to recommend naming of our newest open space purchase, the former CenturyLink property. And Ryan's here to introduce this item.
Yeah, thank you, board and town staff, for having me. The reason I wanted to come and present this to you was just to give you a little bit of background on the process we took. So when you look at the data that came out of the survey, just so you'll be able to understand what you're looking at a little bit better. I had prepared some slides. I'm not sure if someone will be able to present those. I tried to share my screen and I saw that I was not able to. So I would like to go through those if I could.
Let's see if maybe Martin,
Perfect, thank you, Martin. Okay, so going to the next slide, talk a little bit about the process that we went through. So as you all know, we did acquire the property earlier this year. So thank you again, everyone that was involved. Still, it's been fantastic having that property. But the next thing that the Open Space Committee talked about was, when we talked about naming, we said that there's already adjacent land that the town owned. And we felt that it was important that if we're going to be naming this property, that we name both groups of land and not just the CenturyLink purchase. It would be confusing to be looking up at that ridge and having maps or names that showed, some arbitrary line through that open space that one is the CenturyLink purchase and one isn't. So hopefully that makes sense, but that was a strong desire of the group. And then, so after that, the process we took was that the committee came up with names, and we submitted a group of names, about a dozen, into a survey that then we put out on Safe Superior. I'm sorry, not Safe Superior, Superior Source. It was open for about 4 weeks, where residents could come in and either vote for one of the names that the committee had put into the survey, or they could write in their own vote and we also asked them for notes on why they wanted to vote that way. So if you could go to the next slide, please, we can see some of the data here. So on the left, what you're seeing was the voting that we got from the names that OSAC had submitted, with Coyote Ridge getting the majority of the votes, Superior Skyline 18%, and then Skyline Ridge 16%. On the right, what you're seeing is a word cloud of those write-in names that we had allowed the residents to do. And just so you know, we had about 180 residents that voted on the left, and we had 125 residents that wrote in names in that survey. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look through the data. There's a lot of write-in data. Some of it maybe not so serious and a little bit comical and maybe some funny, but a lot of it was pretty good feedback in there. And this is the most important thing I wanted to bring up, was that the voting on the left was only from the names that OSAC had pre-populated the survey with. So you have to take those with a little bit of grain of salt, because we didn't have community feedback that was feeding into that list. One major takeaways that we took, though, from both the voting and the write-ins was that Coyote Ridge kept coming up as a popular choice. A lot of the comments were around, well, we already know that area is Coyote Ridge, so why would we change it? Anyway, we just wanted to make sure that, if you didn't have a time to read through all the comments, that was a theme that seemed to pop out to the group. And so from that, and going to the last slide, we then took this data, the group then voted and came up with a recommendation that was in several packets ago, but we came up with these 4 names that we thought you should consider. Obviously the board can do whatever you like, and you'll consider these or come up with your own, but our top were Coyote Ridge, Superior Ridge, Superior Overlook, and Superior Skyline. Coyote Ridge for the reasons we discussed, and then we liked Ridge, Overlook, and Skyline, and Superior is just such a good name to use in naming of anything. That's why we gravitated towards that name as well. So I appreciate the time. I'm here to answer any questions you have, but I wanted to give you that overview of the process that we took. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that work. And just for the record, I did not stack my own name in this this process. Although Folsom Field East would have been a good addition too.
So Ryan, Ryan, thanks for the presentation, and thanks for you and to OSAC for getting the feedback. It's, when you name something, it becomes real, right? So I really like it. And for the record, while I don't think it's going to win, if we could do Laney McLandface, I would vote absolutely 100% for that. And for those that don't know the story between Bodie McBoatface, Google it, look it up. It's brilliant.
Well, Kevin, don't forget, there's also Spacey McSpaceface in there too.
Space McSpaceface is pretty good, but Landy McLandface just rolls off the tongue a little bit better for me.
Fair enough.
My only concern about Coyote Ridge is if somebody throws it into the Google machine, trying to get to an elementary school, or see their grandparents' kid, or the middle school. I forget if it's elementary school or middle school. Forgive me, Broomfield. But I know it's a school in Broomfield. And some grandparent coming from out of town gets redirected 12 miles away. Did that come up, Ryan, at all in your discussions, the fact there's already a Coyote Ridge within 5 or 10 miles?
It actually did not. It's a good point and something to consider, but it didn't come up in our discussions at all.
I mean, I think most of us that have been here for a little bit refer to it as Coyote Ridge. And so it's a natural thing. It's going to go into the Google machine, and that's what I worry about. So,
fair point.
Ryan, one of the things that came consistently throughout all the surveys is just, and I think you alluded to it too, the word superior, the name Superior. I mean, did you try smushing any of these together, sort of like, the Superior's Coyote Ridge or the Coyote Ridge at Superior?
We didn't go that far, right? We wanted to throw some names out there. We know from historical naming processes that you all will consider these, but you will also consider other names, and we'll just see what happens, right? So we know that we've done our part. We've given you some data, and we're just looking forward to having a name so we can get to the next stage of our planning on what we'd like to do in that space.
Makes sense. Thanks.
All right, I'll go ahead and kick off the discussion. To kind of a different direction, but so I mean, of the 4 names that y'all have proposed, I mean, my favorite by far would be one that doesn't have either Ridge or Skyline, oddly enough. I feel like Ridge is a little weird because we don't actually own what I think of as the top of the ridge, which is the road. We own kind of one side of the ridge. So to me, Ridge makes sense more if we magically acquired the land on the other side and the whole thing could be the ridge. And then Skyline, kind of for similar reasons. You can't see the skyline from up there, even on a clear day of Denver. And if we're talking about the town of Superior skyline, that's probably better served by something closer to our downtown area. So I would like to advocate, I really like the Superior Overlook. I think as I've talked to friends about going and meeting up there for a run or a picnic or whatever, we kind of refer to it as the Overlook. And I think that does make sense since it's overlooking Superior. And Kevin, also to your point, I would add that I did Google all the names to see, are there other trails in Colorado that are like this, and the only one that there is Coyote Ridge, which is my only reason for not liking that.
Yeah, I actually love, I mean, Laura, just to respond to the ridge. I mean, I always think about that. I mean, I see it out my front door, right? So I always think about that as the ridge. So I love it. By the way, those for, you know, we're obviously gonna have public comment, and the 4 of you that are in our attendees that I just checked, Clint's gonna call on you all by name. So get ready to express an opinion. Because I don't know, I mean, there's no bad choice, by the way. These are all great names.
I'll jump in the pool. So first I'll make the statement. A, Landy McLandface, obviously, but B, I hate it when names come up on our agenda because you're right. There's no wrong answer, and I feel like we always spend so much time going over this, and ultimately we could have all done it all in about 30 seconds and still had a great outcome. If we're putting our opinions out there, I think I fall on the opposite side of Laura on this one. Coyote Ridge, for obvious reasons, it's what the town already knows the area as. Most people didn't even know that Coyote Ridge didn't extend up into the CenturyLink property. They just assumed all of it was Coyote Ridge. So I think there's already just some inertia that's behind that name. But if we are going to adjust it, I agree with Ryan that Superior is a great addition to any name, and keeping to the original theme of Coyote Ridge, I think Superior Ridge is the second choice I'd go with. So I'm in favor of those two as my primary options behind Landy McLandface.
So I think Ryan, first off, thank you, Ryan, for presenting and putting together the presentation tonight. And thanks for all the hard work that OSAC did, not just in the process of naming it, but actually making this acquisition happen. You know, we couldn't have done it without OSAC's hard work. So thank you. You know, generally speaking, I don't like to overthink these things, and you know, if we do a survey and take the pulse of the community and the results are overwhelming, you know, the people are paying for this, and I would generally side with just letting the people decide, right? And so, you know, here we had survey results, 47% came in favor of Coyote Ridge. However, I think Ryan raised a good point in terms of kind of the methodology for how the names were actually proposed. And, you know, I do have a little issue with the data because, you know, the survey results that came back, they were survey results on names that were suggested to the community. And then there was a separate option for the community to then come up with names. So we didn't really get I think a clean pool of data here. We got kind of a, certain names were artificially, I think, juiced in one way, you know, because they were already proposed, so people voted for them. And, you know, I think a better way to have done this would have been just to take in the pulse of the community, getting some name suggestions from the community cold without any suggestions from the town. And then, you know, kind of looking at, you know, what names appeared multiple times, and then using that to actually draw a clean data set from it. So, you know, the 47% is one thing, but it's I don't think it's a true and accurate 47%. I guess ultimately, like I'm fine with going with Coyote Ridge. I think that's probably the right name for it. All the names are a little bit generic, and you know, if what we're looking for is for, you know, just kind of a generic sounding, you know, open space, I think, you know, any of these names are fine, and they'll do the trick. If we wanted to do something newsworthy and noteworthy, going with something like Landy McLandface would really make an impact. And I would be 100% on board supporting Landy McLandface.
I think this is why the board should not be in the business of picking names.
Wait a minute, Clint. Wait. This is what democracy is all about. I'm also in support of Landy McLandface.
I'll be the wet blanket. I'm not supportive of Landing McLeanface, and I also really feel strongly we should not call this Coyote Ridge. We already made that mistake with Ormond Roche. I think it's really problematic when you have two trailheads named the same thing, where people can Google map it and go to the wrong one. There is a Coyote Ridge already in South Colorado, and if we are eventually going to put a trailhead here, it's going to be very confusing to have people potentially Google and go to the wrong one when you're telling your friends to meet you at a trailhead.
So notwithstanding that I love Landing McLeanface and Spacey McSpaceface, I tend to agree with, a lot of what, I think everybody said. Coyote Ridge is good. It doesn't, it's a safe name. There's nothing wrong with it. People are comfortable with it. Same thing with Superior Skyline, Superior Ridge. But none of them jump out to you. And that's kind of why, Superior's Coyote Ridge at least mushes the two together, but it still doesn't it's not super distinctive. And, other than Morgul or Bismarck, references to the Coors Classic, I'm not sure that there was anything short of the Bodie McBoatface references that really jumped out to me as like awe-inspiring. Coyote Ridge, it's safe. Superior's Coyote Ridge is super safe as well. This is what's really hard about this, because I think all the names that came through are good, safe names. I don't have a problem with any of them. So I'm happy with a lot of things, I think, but I really do think Spacey McSpaceface could, really just put us on the map. Try to say that 3 times fast. I dare you.
You definitely won't show up in Southern Colorado by accident. There will not be any confusion in terms of what trailhead you're showing up.
Nope. And I see T-shirts and branding opportunities too. Bodie McBoatface, I put on my Bodie McBoatface T-shirt, if you didn't notice. So.
And just, if we don't go with either of those, I think this is a great opportunity for at least a legitimate trailhead name, if it's not our open space name. Similar to what the British did. They didn't name the full ship Bodie McBoatface, but they did name one of the dinghies that were on board Bodie McBoatface. I think we've got a real opportunity there.
Yeah, I could absolutely get behind that. I think naming the whole thing something as whimsical as that, it kind of takes away from the significance that this is the largest piece of open space and this is the thing we came up with. I could get behind Coyote Ridge. I could get behind any of the others. To me, I agree. Coyote Ridge kind of is safe and it's identifiable. I could get behind that. I could support a trailhead with one of those other fun names, but not the whole thing. So there you go. Or Folsom Field East. So there you go. Okay, we're past our time on this, folks. We're now back into the red here. So let's reel it in here.
Neil, could you get behind? I hear you advocating for Spacey McSpaceface. Could you get behind?
Wait, say that again. I didn't quite hear the second half of your sentence.
Well, it's hard to say without laughing. Where are you, Neil, in this?
I like Coyote Ridge. I really do. I do recognize it's confusing with other places in Colorado. But it's almost one of those things where, I think that the community has sort of named it already. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think the only thing I'm trying to figure out a way is how do you add the word Superior, the name to Superior to it and preserve sort of the community's reference. And also, as this is in Superior.
It just makes it sound like a development though, like right away.
True.
Coyote Ridge at Superior, starting.
Yeah, it sounds like a housing complex. It's true.
What about if we go with Superior Ridge? Because that preserves a little bit of the old. It's, if people are informally calling it Coyote Ridge, it preserves a little bit of that, but we still get the Superior name in there and we avoid the confusion with Coyote Ridge.
Well, we have a housing development called the Ridge on McCaslin already.
True.
So, if we're looking to avoid
But it's not
confusion.
Superior. Yeah, it's not Superior Ridge. I could get behind that, Laura.
Well, I mean, either that or I still really like the Superior Overlook. I think we don't have anything like that. I think it describes what it is better than a ridge, and there's nothing else named Superior Overlook.
So, as much as I like Landy McLand Face or Spacey Space Face, the idea that, OSAC made their recommendation, I think that the community already refers to it as Coyote Ridge, kind of leaves me at the conclusion that the only real choice here is Coyote Ridge, because I think the people have already named it. I think it's already known as Coyote Ridge. I mean, but I would love a trail or a trailhead or a parking lot that is whimsical and enjoyable. So I'm interested in hearing what the public says, but I think that this is Coyote Ridge.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm there too.
I will be voting no for Coyote Ridge. The primary point of the name is to distinguish something and make it easy to find. If we name this Coyote Ridge, we are intentionally making it hard for people to find on a map.
Well, we're also the opposite side of that is it's been called Coyote Ridge for 20 years. I mean, you're going to have people continue to call it Coyote Ridge. It's going to add confusion. So, I mean, you're going to add confusion. To your point, if there's multiple Coyote Ridges across the country, or you're going to add confusion if you try to change something that people already have been naming and using within their daily conversations for however many years. It is what it is. I stand behind. I think where Neil and Mark said that it's been Coyote Ridge.
We just need to get the best website optimization brains in Superior working on it, and they can get that Coyote Ridge changed to where it just there's no confusion of where it is.
Okay, let's right, we just need to hire an SEO. I mean, if you type in Coyote Ridge, we're numbers like 8 and 9. And that's right now without even being officially named. But Coyote Ridge Superior Mountain Biking Trails and Coyote Ridge Town of Superior. So we're already there, and I think this formalizes it.
There's also a Coyote Ridge Elementary School in Broomfield. I mean, we're inviting all kinds of confusion here. I would really urge the board, let's name it something that people actually know that we're talking about this.
So actually, that's a good question. I mean, this will be formally named Coyote Ridge Open Space, or will it just be Coyote Ridge?
The Coyote Ridge Open Space.
It's open space that's named Coyote Ridge.
Right. Okay. So there is a distinction between Coyote Ridge Elementary.
It's not an elementary school. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're going to an elementary school, you're going to go to that one. If you're,
But Coyote Ridge also brings up the Coyote Ridge Open Space Preserve in Fort Collins and the Coyote Ridge Natural Area. I mean, we were all talking about distinctive names. I'm not in support of Bodie McBoatface or any of those, but I think we can be a little more distinctive than naming it for something where there are already tons in the area.
I feel like we're going in circles. Can we
okay, let's go to public comment. How about that? Anyone in the public, and I can start naming you if you don't speak up. So anyone in the public like to make a comment on this? Now is your time. It's been a pretty quiet public comment night. All right, Chris Oakes. There we go. Chris, are you still there?
Hey,
there he is.
So I guess what's kind of interesting is how much got spent on this space. How many tens of millions of dollars and 15 minutes has been spent on Spacey McSpaceface. You guys, the town of Superior fought to get this spot. And we went to the debt markets to get this. And if you guys can't, you have to recognize that and do something that affords this space the opportunity that the little town of Superior went up against oil and gas and won. So if you want to get something that's very safe, I mean, cool, great, whatever, but like, you know, put Superior first on this. That's all I got. You spent too much money to get a stupid name.
All right, thanks, Chris. Any additional public comment? Anyone else? Okay. Someone like to make a motion because we've set our pieces.
I'll make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-78, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the name Coyote Ridge for the new parcel.
I think just for clarity, Mark, Coyote Ridge Open Space.
Coyote Ridge Open Space.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis, second by Trustee Ryan. Roll call vote.
Lasis,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwazinski,
No.
Folsom.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right.
Lynn, real quick before we move off of this, Matt, at some point we're going to need to stop calling. We'll have to come up with an actual name, I think, for 1500, and it'd be nice to have a name before we have an opening date. So maybe this is something we can get on ProStack's radar or one of the other groups, but it seems like something we should probably start working on because I know OSAC put a decent amount of time into this. So by the way, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks, Ryan, and good suggestion, Ken. Thanks. The whimsical names could live on at that facility too, so just keep those wheels turning. All right, we're on to our final agenda item for tonight, which is number 9, adoption of resolutions approving amendments to the purchasing policy for the town Superior Metropolitan District number 1 and Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District.
Thanks, Mayor. In 2008, the town adopted a purchasing policy. I've had some recent discussion with the board about possibly amending the policy and looking at procurement limits for staff and making changes to those. So I asked Paul Mills, our finance director, to do some research on other cities and what their limits are and bring back some recommendations, which he's done. So I'll ask Paul to go through the research he's done and the amendments that we're recommending, and then we're opening up for questions from the board.
Thank you, Matt. Paul Millis, town staff. As Matt identified, the town board has established guidelines for procurement within the town of Superior. The last material modification to these particular procurement guidelines was 2008. There are a number of provisions within the purchasing policy, but really 2 of the most important are at what levels staff will go out and get formal bids or proposals, as well as what level the contractual amounts will go to the town board. So back in 2008, essentially the contractual level where the town manager could approve was at $25,000. And 12 years hence, we looked at 5 local entities, similar size. And they, over the years, have effectively increased the ability for the town manager to approve standard contracts up to $100,000. Essentially, 4 of the 5 are in that realm, from $75,000 to $100,000. Erie is apparently going through the process right now, but their current policy is similar to ours, where the town manager may approve at a level of $25,000. So, long story short.
Just so you know, they're considering 100. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Kendra. So that is staff's recommendation, essentially to increase the town manager's approval authority to $100,000, but effectively keep all the other individual requirements in place, where in fact we would require 3 quotes from purchases between $2,000 and $15,000. And then anything above $15,000, we would continue to require 3 formal bids in that process.
Paul, forgive me, I should have asked this question in advance. Thank you for the work, because I thought about it and then I got busy. From the change from 25, if we went to 100, approximately how many things would that take off the board calendar per year, the consent agenda?
You know, Kevin, I knew that question would come up, and I'm sorry. I didn't.
Just spitball it for me.
You know, you had 1 item tonight, for example. You know, I would say maybe a couple dozen. You know, a dozen to 2 dozen a year.
And I mean, I'll go first, guys. I mean, my sense is so many of these things get pulled off the consent agenda. I actually like the opportunity to get under the covers a little bit and to see a detailed memo about it. And when there's a if there's a detailed memo, and a detailed memo in the consent agenda, then I'm comfortable and I approve it. But when there's data that's not in a consent agenda, so you know, tonight we had a couple things and they were big dollars, right? But it's helpful to pull it off and bring things out into the public. And so my instincts are, I want to hear what my colleagues say, but right now my instincts are to kind of keep it the same. Because I, you know, I'm about increasing transparency and I worry this would decrease the level of transparency. There's my current thinking, but I haven't made up my mind. I want to hear what other people are thinking.
I'm happy to jump in. So I think this was one of my comments back when we were doing evaluations back in 2019. I voiced a concern about the level of micromanagement at times from the board of town staff and looking for ways that we could increase the authority and autonomy in appropriate ways to both manage our time better and to ensure that we still had strong processes in place. And I think this was one of the outcomes of that conversation. So I'm happy to see this coming forward. I do think it's an appropriate delegation of authority, as we've seen it as other benchmarks that in other jurisdictions. It will help us manage our meetings better, which is another thing we've been struggling with over the past 2 years now that I've been on the board. And I do believe there's still accountability in place. If there's ever an inappropriate purchase, an inappropriate decision, it'll still bubble its way up to the board if there's some type of issue or problem or concern. And I will make the statement that even though Matt, if we do approve this tonight, if there's any, you have the ability to approve up to $100,000, but that doesn't mean that something doesn't necessarily have the ability to come before the board. So the way I read this is, Matt, if there's something that is you think relevant, that even though it's less than $100,000, if you think it's something that the board should see, that still falls within your discretion to add to a consent agenda, which I think would allay some of Kevin's concerns to make sure that it still gets appropriate visibility.
Yeah, and I'll just say to that point, I would agree with you, because there's certain things, even though they're budgeted, that I'm not sure the board wants to move forward with. Town Hall addition is a great example. We'll have an architectural contract that'll probably be within these limits, and I don't want to spend money on that contract if the board doesn't want to actually move forward with the project. So that's something that, for example, I would bring forward to the board.
Yeah, I mean, same thing like with the goat program that we had with Mutton Mowers, this past summer, right? Like that was, not a really significant dollar amount, but it was something I think that merited having the discussion in an open board meeting because it was something that, was going to be different than, what the public was used to. And it was, going to affect people's, backyards for the summer. So, a situation like that, I think is appropriate. I think Ken really stated it well. I mean, the impression that I got from the reviews that we went through last year was that this was the direction that we wanted to do. So we weren't doing so much micromanaging. We were delegating to the town manager. I think that these dollar amounts are appropriate. But at the same time, I do trust Matt and staff to, on a case-by-case basis, when there's something that merits coming to the board, that it'll be put on an agenda, for us to not be surprised about things. And then also, for situations that, the public would be interested in knowing kind of, what's going on behind the scenes, that, there's a time and place to put things on the agenda, notwithstanding the fact that you'll have the authority to make the purchase without having done so. One question that I had about the policy line item there was a line item about directing the purchase of electric vehicles. And this is a question for Paul, I think, when it is, quote, financially viable. And I just wanted to have a better understanding of what that means, what your understanding of financial viability is. How do you determine that? And if you could just kind of speak to, what the town's efforts are going to be with respect to electric vehicles.
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Mark, there's some level of ambiguity obviously associated with that. So I guess my comment would be associated with that is, if it seems reasonable, I mean, if it's double the cost, for example, to purchase an electric pickup truck that provides the functionality that we need, I would say that's not a financially viable alternative. I think to some degree it's would be under the discretion of staff. I mean, we know, at least at this point in time, that those type of product will probably be more expensive. If they're materially more expensive, 50% more expensive, 100% more expensive, at least in my opinion, that is not financially viable. But that's just my perspective.
Okay, that's helpful. I mean, I think obviously the market's going to change, over the next 5-10 years. We're going to see a lot more options, right? Right now there are fewer options for buying electric vehicles than there are for internal combustion engines, but that's going to change over the course of time. So I'm fine, trusting your judgment in that regard. But I also don't necessarily want it to dissuade you. I wouldn't want you to be rigid about it. And if we're going to avoid paying for fuel costs, it may make sense for us to buy. And if we're reasonably anticipating that the life expectancy of one of these vehicles is maybe longer than it would be for a traditional vehicle, take those things into account, because I think it's certainly something that I care about, that I think that the town should lead on it. So I'm certainly willing to spend a little more to get electric vehicles on a regular, case by case basis than just looking at it from a pure economic perspective.
And if it provides the board any level of comfort, I'm kind of conservative with these approaches, and Matt just kind of slaps me in the shape as it relates to, let's do something that's reasonable.
And I would anticipate that we'll have these discussions during the budget development, because we'll know going in what vehicles we're going to replace, and we'll have done our research and what the different costs will be, and we'll discuss those with you, I would think, as we're developing the next year's budget.
So just back to the increase from 25 to 100. We have, and I don't want to relitigate old issues, but we have had a procurement issue or two, right? And a reason why we have a procurement issue or two, or unlike maybe larger towns that might have a procurement, somebody that's bringing that level of expertise, and that's their day job, to push RFP, to run an evaluation, write the summaries. And again, we've had a couple issues, and we're a small town with 32 employees, and we're asking that are running Parks and Rec or public works to become 12 times a year to become procurement officers. I'm not suggesting we have a procurement officer added, but I kind of like the additional oversight that this board brings, because it has resulted in a couple changes in the last 4 years. So I don't know. I'm just not quite like, I'm all for increasing autonomy, but we're not Erie, Broomfield, or Boulder. We're a small town, and having an extra set of eyes on something and spending 10 or 15 minutes, 10 times a year, to me, is just the price of being a trustee.
So Kevin, I want to jump in because I think I was along the same lines as Ken, as we came onto the board and we went through the first, sort of review of Matt. I think an aspect of, his ability to manage the town is autonomy. And I think the part that I didn't, and we had talked about the delegation, 2 years ago, and the part that I didn't really register is we haven't touched this since 2008, and the cost of everything has gone up, right? So his delegation has effectively gotten smaller and smaller relative to the contracts that he's got to oversee. And I suspect that, if there were a way to plot the amount of time that the boards had to oversee these contracts because the delegation didn't move with the costs, it's probably gone up for that reason. So I'm on board with increasing it. I'm struggling with increasing it from 25 to 100K, a 4X increase, because I don't know how Louisville or Lafayette got to their level. There's probably steps that they took. They went from 25 to 60 to 80 to 100. And I'm kind of in that same boat as you, Kevin. Is I do want Matt to have more autonomy. I think that makes sense. The cost of everything has gone up. I'm just struggling from going from 25 to 100 overnight, and I'd rather see like a midpoint, like 65. Try it out for a couple of years, and then we ratchet it up, because as you said, the other communities that we have here, the staff in those communities are significantly greater to give their town managers that ability to sort of manage the RFP process. I think our board does a lot of work because Matt's able to keep the staff smaller, and I think that works great for our town. And I think that is a valuable attribute that this board brings. And I want to help Matt by giving him a lot more authority, but not necessarily significantly more at the level of 100. Because even if you take the pros master plan process that we're doing right now at 65,000, that would have not necessarily had to come to the board. I think Matt would have brought it anyways because it's a big deal. But there's a lot of little things here and there that I think the board likes to see. And I think if we kind of split between 125, somewhere in the midpoint, I think I'm comfortable with that today. And then let's try it out, see what happens to the workload, see what happens to the RFP and the sort of provisioning process and how it goes from there.
And I'll just appreciate those comments. And I think we have quite a bit of oversight. We have the finance committee that just started. We just started implementing the quarterly financial reports going on the consent agenda. And then we also provide the monthly statements to the board via I think we put them in the Dropbox, Paul, to give you additional oversight. So I mean, we're trying to be as transparent as we can be, and you're exactly right as far as the pros master plan. That would have been something that I would have brought to the board, regardless of what you decided to do tonight, because it's a big community project, and the best way to get the word out on those is to have it on the agenda and you guys discuss it. So I'm doing that no matter what changes you decide to make tonight or not.
So I'm all on board with increasing it, but I'll kind of circle back to something I brought up last week at the retreat. When we looked at the CARES funding, right? And I think I'm still struggling with why we're spending 110,000 of the CARES funding on 1500 Colton. And I don't remember that ever coming to the board. I know that we haven't necessarily spent that money yet, but at the same time, I always view that CARES money as supposed to go into the community. But under the delegation of the emergency powers or whatever, Matt, maybe you have complete authority to do that. But that's one of those places where at 70,000 for the IT equipment, Matt could have presumably green lighted it on his own, and the board wouldn't necessarily needed to see or have seen that. Whereas I think a collaborative discussion would have been really beneficial. 170,000 on IT equipment for 1500 Colton, or additional business grants. I mean, that to me would have been the right discussion. And that's why the delegation, it does matter, because the things that can happen, maybe we're not all on board with that.
Okay, good discussion. I'm in favor of increasing the limits as we've got proposed here. I think it's just makes sense to revisit something that hasn't been adjusted for many years and potentially take some things off the agenda that we don't necessarily need to. But I think with the Matt's discretion, we'll see things that we need to see, and we can always pull other things off as necessary. But I'm fine with proceeding as the items are drafted.
Public comment?
Okay. Anyone in the public like to make comment on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none. All right. Final comments from the board.
Yeah, Matt, let's just continue. I'll support my colleagues. Matt, we've talked about it. Let's just use that Friday memo to just over communicate everything. I think Neil's got a good comment around that. So let's just, and even if, that Friday memo sometimes gets large, and I know you got a lot to do, and it doesn't come out until Friday night or occasionally Saturday morning or Monday morning. Yeah. I'm okay with that thing being late. I'd rather have it get an email saying I'm running late because a lot happened this week. And so if you could just continue to promise me and the future board that you're going to use that Friday memo to over communicate, then that's great. Then I obviously support you and town staff. And I think Laura's been making some really good points over the last couple of years that we have to have shorter meetings if we're going to make this job remotely attractive to future trustees. And this is a good strategy to have shorter meetings. I mean, our job, not yours.
Right, yeah.
So I think just to echo that a little bit, I mean, I'm fully supportive of this. I'd like to give and town staff as much autonomy as we can. With regard to the Friday digest, I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter when it comes out. If it's Friday afternoon, great. If it's Saturday morning, that's fine too. I mean, we're all reading it, I hope. So I agree with Kevin in that if it takes longer to get it out, then that's fine as well. I think it's only been late like once, but
no, yeah, exactly. Right. My point is, I just, there were, I mean, Matt, I mean, we had a hiccup or two on the public works side in terms of some procurement stuff. We had I felt surprised by some of the leasing. Neil has a strong point of view on the CARES Act, and so stuff like that. Let's just throw it when in doubt, put it in.
That I'm happy to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve Town of Superior Resolution number
R-79.
79, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving modifications to the town's purchasing policy.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lish, second by Mayor Pro Tem Lasis. Roll call vote, please.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Skwadzinski,
yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lasis.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Motion passes unanimously. All right, that concludes our agenda.
Yeah, we got a couple more.
We have two more. So
Sorry, yes.
I move to approve Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Resolution number SMID-10, Series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District approving modifications to its purchasing policy.
All right, motion by Director Lish, second by Director Lasis. Roll call vote.
Lasis,
Yes.
Folsom,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Kwasinski.
Yes.
Okay,
All right, last one. Superior Metropolitan. I make a motion to approve Superior Metropolitan District number 1, resolution number SMD number 1-4, series 2020, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District number 1, approving modifications to its purchasing policy.
Okay, motion by Director Lish, second by Director Lasis. Roll call vote.
what? Kwasinski,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Lish,
Yes.
Lasis,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. I think that concludes everything. Anyone have anything else before we adjourn tonight? And we will just wait for announcement on whether election's certified to whether we're meeting in November 9th. Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep everybody updated. Kendra, myself, Phyllis, we'll let you know the latest information on the election as we get it. So.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
All right. Good meeting, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thank you.